Although the bedside table lamp had been dimmed to a soft candlelight glow, Tom could still make out his daughter sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hands. Sleepily, she murmured, Who is it? Her voice was low and groggy. Tom felt utterly ridiculous for intruding, but he made sure to step further into the room, squinting as he scanned every nook and cranny, ensuring no one was hiding there. Quickly crossing the room to the bathroom entrance, he peered inside. Seeing that no one was there, he walked back to the other side of the room, pulling aside the curtains that covered the glass wall. Once again, he found no one. He sniffed the air, trying to detect any hint of male cologne, but all he could smell was his own scent, mingled with the familiar aroma of the cleaning supplies the staff used, along with the fresh flowers they always placed in the center of the coffee table each morning. "Sorry, honey, it's just me. Just checking up on you," he said hesitantly, his tone a little awkward. "You're just coming in?" she asked, looking up now and glancing in his direction, somewhat making him pause his actions. From the way she was angled, Tom could only see her side profile, faintly illuminated by the lamp's glow. The rest of her face was hidden in shadow, but her tone clearly conveyed her surprise. "It's, She paused, glancing at the clock on the table. "Late," she concluded. Tom chuckled. "After all the years I've spent in this city, I can pretty much call it home. So I guess I'm safe no matter the hour," he quipped, slipping his hands into his pockets. "That sounds like one of Mum's lines. I hope she hasn't recruited you too to persuade me about the beauty and safety of staying close to family," she said with a playful flair, then yawned again. Tom thought she looked absolutely adorable, and his heart warmed at the idea of Bella trying to convince Dawn to move to New York. "She has a point, though," he said, grinning. "Good night, Dad," Dawn said as she settled back into bed. Tom chuckled, raising his hands in mock surrender. Okay, I know when not to cross the line. "Good night, lovely," he said, smiling as he walked out of the room. He let out a deep sigh, feeling satisfied that his daughter was safe in bed. And not with that guy. He shook his head, rubbing his face with one hand, while the other remained in his pocket. Truth be told, Dawn could do worse. Anton seemed like a decent enough guy. Tom just didn't want that life for his only daughter. Anton stood precariously outside on the narrow ledge just beside the guest room window, letting out a sigh of relief as he heard the door shut inside. Resting his head against the wall, he began to shake with laughter. "Gosh, I'm so screwed," he muttered to himself. It had been an Herculean struggle to stay away from Dawn Hill over the past few days. There was an undeniable magnetic pull between them that had been both terrifying and irresistible. He'd done his best to avoid her, steering clear of places she might be and trying not to seek her out. For the most part, he thought he'd succeeded, despite Dawn taking every opportunity to be around him. It had been excruciating. Every time he passed her, he wanted to touch her, as if some part of him needed to latch onto her just to feel whole. But he'd resisted. At some point, he even feared that Dawn might think he wasn't interested. Yet, part of him hoped she would believe that so she might stay away. And that scared him even more. His thoughts were a chaotic mess, but after that morning's explosion, all he could think about was the possibility of either of them dying without ever having kissed. He dwelled on how short life was, that either of them could be gone, along with whatever unspoken feelings they harbored for each other. Then Aiden had gone and opened the path for them, tearing down the damn floodgates. Earlier on in the garden maze, the isolation had created some kind of elusive shield, and Dawn had reached for his hand, burying hers in his. The touch had felt like someone pressing a live wire to his skin, short-circuiting his mind. He'd turned to her, cupped her face, and kissed her, and her reaction had floored him. She sighed into his mouth, her body melting into his like she had been waiting for this moment forever. Anton was pretty sure what was left of his brain cells, after his time behind enemy lines in Afghanistan, had shorted out completely. He kissed her like nothing else mattered, like he would die if he stopped. And Dawn didn't help. "Come with me to my..." He'd begun to say yes, she replied, not even letting him finish. "Dawn," he rasped, his voice thick with warning. "Yes, Anton, yes," she whispered against his lips, agreeing to everything before he even said it. He had forgotten about Aidan and Noria and had taken Dawn straight to his apartment. They spent the entire day making love, and even then, it wasn't enough. As night fell, knowing she might be missed, he offered to walk her back to the Hawthorne residence. They ended up making love again, this time in the garden on a damp bench. By that point, Anton knew he was in real trouble. Then his phone rang. He didn't want to answer it, but perhaps his guardian angel wanted him to live through the year, because he eventually picked up, after 3 persistent calls from Jake, Charles, and a text to Dawn from Anita. Bless her. "You're a freaking walking dead man, Anton. Mr. Hill and Andrew just got back." Jake's growl echoed in his ear. Anton groaned loudly, ending the call. Sharing a look with Dawn, he had submitted to the feeling that he was in the "if I perish mode, but Dawn wasn't ready to let him die yet. "We should probably hurry," she said, barely containing her laughter. Their race back to the house had been almost comedic. Anton had no idea how Charles, Jake, or Anita had roped Miss Jonas into the whole thing, but it was she who let them in through the laundry passage, leading them to the first floor. Then she smacked Anton on the back before leaving. "Damn it," he groaned inwardly, rubbing his back as he hurriedly led Dawn to her room. He had intended to leave, but Dawn pulled him in for a kiss. Moments later, Mr. Hill's knock resounded in the room. Anton just knew the old man was going to enter and search the room, which was how he ended up outside on the ledge. Despite the absurdity of it all, Anton hadn't felt this alive in a long time. His chest heaved with silent laughter. Moments later, the window pushed open and Dawn leaned out, concern etched on her face. Carefully, Anton climbed back inside. Dawn mouthed an apology and he grinned, pressing a kiss on her lips. He probably shouldn't have, because once their lips touched, he couldn't stop. Lifting her up, she instinctively wrapped her legs around him as he carried her back to bed. The following morning, Nathaniel's eyes fluttered open, and a slow smile spread across his face as he took in Aria's sleeping posture. She was snuggled closely against him, part of him providing support to her baby bump. Her face was nestled against his skin, and her hand had slipped from cradling her stomach into his boxers, as usual. He gazed at her lips longingly, reaching out to run his fingers through her curls and gently stroke her scalp. When he felt her respond, her hand moving against his skin and making him shiver slightly, he was about to kiss her when he heard the rustle of pages. His heart skipped a beat as he turned and saw Owen lying on a side couch, flipping through his mum's medical journal. Nathaniel mentally cursed. Although a cover shielded him and Aria from the chest down, he quickly checked to ensure no part of Aria's body was uncovered. He remembered locking the adjoining door last night and surmised that Aria must have checked on the boys during the night, as the door was now ajar. He sighed, realizing he needed to hasten his plan to move upstairs and finish setting up the new rooms for the babies, as well as Owen and Liam. Each child would have their own room in a separate suite, which would provide Nathaniel and Aria with some privacy and prevent them from waking up to find their 5-year-old already in their room while they were asleep in the nude. Carefully slipping out from under the covers, he got out of bed and grabbed a robe before joining Owen, who was sitting on a side couch. "Good morning, Dad," Owen greeted him. "Good morning, son. What do you have there?" Nathaniel asked, although he already knew. "Mum's medical journal," Owen replied, sitting up. "What mystery are we trying to solve now, son?" Nathaniel quipped, making Owen sigh. "I wanted to see if she'd written a new entry for your weekly test," Owen explained. Nathaniel's heart constricted in understanding. He took the journal from him, placed it carefully on the coffee table, and then lifted him to sit across his lap. "I promise you, Owen, I'm fine," Nathaniel said, knowing Owen was still concerned about his reaction to the explosion at the courthouse the previous morning. "You know how your mum is always on me regarding my health," he added. Owen nodded. "So you must know that if I'm not fine, she would be worrying too," Nathaniel continued. "Why couldn't you move when the explosion happened, Daddy?" Owen asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "That was because—" Nathaniel paused, trying to find a way to explain his terror to his 5-year-old. Then he remembered that his son was very intelligent and would understand in whatever way he explained. He smiled at Owen and continued, "Remember when I was really sick? And you, Liam, and your mom were living in Sylvan Ridge? Owen nodded. It wasn't just that I was physically ill. Living without your mom was the hardest time of my life. Now with her back with you and Liam, and with us expecting new babies, just imagine if I were to lose her again, Nathaniel said. That would be awful, Daddy, Owen said, nodding. Yeah, it would be. In the car, that thought felt so real to me that I was terrified. And that's what you saw, Nathaniel explained. I'm sorry, though, that I couldn't help ease your fears and got lost in my own. I'm sorry for making you worry about me on top of everything, he said, his voice rough. Owen pressed his face against Nathaniel's chest, and Nathaniel smiled, wrapping him in a warm embrace and pressing a kiss on his hair. I love you so much, son. You, your brother, your mom, and your new baby brothers, who we shall never name Michelson, Nathaniel said with a playful tone, making Owen giggle softly. Liam is so silly, Owen remarked. Yeah, that he is, Nathaniel said with a smile. Arya, who had been listening to the heartfelt conversation between father and son, sat up, smiling lovingly at the two of them. Much later, after Nathaniel helped get the twins ready, Miss Everly came to take them, leaving him alone with Arya. Nathaniel turned on the flat-screen portrait-shaped television embedded in the wall. The futuristic, transparent device came alive with sharp, vivid colors. He flipped through the channels until he landed on the business news. The digital ticker scrolling at the bottom of the screen listed information about stocks and shares. And then he saw his company's name drift across the display. The details about his new shareholder appeared, and Jake Darfield's name was shown, along with his net worth. He was introduced as a security tech executive and former veteran. Nathaniel chuckled at the brief introduction. If only they knew just how extensive Jake's military record was, they'd tremble with fear. Arya's phone chimed with a message notification, drawing his attention. She had gone into the bathroom, so Nathaniel got up to check the phone. It was an email from the Office of Professional Medical Conduct. He opened it and skimmed through, seeing that it was a simple inspection notice informing Arya of their visit tomorrow. Nathaniel noted that the name of the person who signed the email wasn't the one previously associated with Gray. He wondered whether this was standard protocol or if Gray's friend was operating under some kind of disguise. Whatever it was, Nathaniel knew they were already 2 steps ahead. He figured it was time to tell Arya about what they had uncovered regarding Gray. Just then, his own phone rang. He set Arya's phone down and picked up his, glancing at the caller ID before answering. Hello, Gray, he said. I won't let you do this, Nate. You can't just remove me from the board of a company I helped build. Gray's familiar voice thundered on the other end. I'm going to stop you right there. You might think you're talking to a Hawthorne who's clueless about his family's history, but that's where you're wrong. I have journals about 2 feet high that document my family's business and allies dating back to the 1800s. You, Gray, were a nobody who stumbled upon money and were lucky enough to be invited to make more as a shareholder on the board of my family's dynasty, just like John Davies. But do you know what happened to John Davies, Gray? He got greedy and desperate for money, forgetting that honor was part of the reason he was given the privilege. Just like you, Gray, to be on the board of my family's dynasty, Nathaniel said, his voice low and firm. I didn't break any rules. I didn't. Gray bellowed in desperation, cutting him off. Really? Now we're going to resort to lies, Gray, Nathaniel responded calmly. Then tell me what I did. Tell me what law I broke. Gray shouted. If you truly believe you've done nothing wrong, have your lawyer contact mine. Have a good day, Gray, Nathaniel said, ending the call. His hand shook with barely contained rage at the man's audacity. Baby. Arya's concerned voice came from the bathroom doorway. She had emerged upon hearing Nathaniel's low, angry tone, and now stood watching him with worry in her eyes. What's wrong? She asked. Nathaniel extended his hand for her to come to him, thinking it was time to reveal that the supposed inspection from the Office of Professional Medical Conduct had been orchestrated by one of his shareholders. If she was going to be upset with him, they might as well get it over with. Arya, noticing Nathaniel's tense stance, moved toward him, her brows furrowed with worry. She barely took 3 steps when a sharp ache in her lower back made her stop. She grunted in pain, instinctively cradling her baby bump with one hand while supporting her back with the other. Nathaniel's concern about the OPMC vanished as he hurried to her side in the dimly lit room. "Ariana," he rasped, his voice filled with worry as he joined her. Aria responded with her eyes closed. "Honey, this is the second time in about 8 hours. Are you sure you're okay?" Nathaniel asked, framing her face with both hands and gently stroking her skin. Aria's lips curved into a smile as she opened her eyes to meet his gaze. "Have I ever told you how much I love it when you call me Ariana?" she said in a low, sultry tone. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow at her. "Do you really think this is the right time to bring that up?" he replied. "Why not?" she whispered, smiling up at him. Nathaniel stepped closer. "Because I'm going to want to have you. And you're hardly in the mood for that," he quipped. "What? I'll have you know, husband of mine, that this period is actually a great time for intimacy. It's been scientifically proven that it can aid in childbirth," she said softly. "This period, my love," Nathaniel repeated hesitantly, realizing her meaning. "Oh dear God, Ariana," he whispered in awe. She nodded, grinning. "I'm officially in labor now. How long it will last, I don't know. Like you said, we've had 8 hours since my last warning pain," she said. Nathaniel lowered his head to press his forehead against hers, his eyes locked with hers. "Aren't you supposed to have your water break or something?" he asked, feeling suddenly out of his depth. "Back pain is my thing, not water breaking," she quipped. He gave her a shaky smile. "Tell me what you need," he said, his voice barely audible. "Anything and it's yours, baby," he added, planting kisses all over her face. Her eyelids, her cheeks, her jaw, the tip of her nose, before finally pressing his lips to hers and drawing her bottom lip into his mouth. "Hold me," Aria said a tad emotionally. His gentleness and the fact that he was going to be with her this second time around got to her. Nathaniel whisked her up and carried her to the bed. The two settled on the bed with Nathaniel snuggled behind her and against her back. She was in her undies, and he cradled her stomach, gently stroking her skin. "When should we head to the hospital?" he asked, his heart racing with fear, but he tried not to let it show, trying to match her calm energy. "When the back pain becomes unbearable," she whispered, guiding his hand up to her chest. Nathaniel let out a shaky breath and pressed a kiss on the back of her shoulder. "You want me?" he rasped, his warm breath fanning her ear. "Yes," she whispered, craning her neck to look at him. Nathaniel took her lips in a kiss that started slowly and grew into a fervent, hurried kiss. About 2 hours later, a gentle knock resounded in the room. Nathaniel carefully untangled himself from Aria and got up to answer it. Wearing only his boxers, he grabbed a bathrobe and headed to the door. "Who is it?" he rasped. "It's Andrew, boss," came the muffled reply. Nathaniel opened the door and held up a hand to signal Andrew to be quiet. He slipped into his slippers by the door and stepped outside, closing the door gently behind him, leading Andrew a few meters away from the door. Nathaniel turned to face him. "You haven't been answering your phone, and Dr. Hawthorne's phone is switched off. Rowan is downstairs with Dr. Williams and Dr. Sterling. They want to see Dr. Hawthorne. Something about Samuel Cavalier requesting her presence when Rowan reads his medical evaluation, and the hospital notifying them of an inspection from the Office of Professional Medical Conduct," Andrew said, giving Nathaniel a knowing look. Nathaniel nodded. "It's good they're here," he said, rubbing his face with his hands before running his fingers through his hair. "So have you informed Dr. Hawthorne of what to expect?" "Mr. Hill is downstairs as well," Andrew said. Nathaniel nodded again. "Andrew, my wife is in labor, so pardon me if I don't give a damn about Samuel Cavalier's preferences or the OPMC right now," Nathaniel said, his voice sharp. Andrew opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again before swallowing hard. "What do we do, boss?" he asked, panic evident in his voice. She said to wait until the back pain is unbearable. I have no idea what unbearable means in the context of labor, and I'm trying to stay calm for her right now. Do you understand? Nathaniel replied, his voice low and almost primal. "Okay, boss." Message received loud and clear. Screw the OPMC, Andrew said, his agitation palpable. "I don't want to leave her side for even a second," Nathaniel said, "but I know I need to speak with the doctors. I'm going to get dressed, and you're going to help me get Anita here to stay with her while we talk to them," he added. "On it," Andrew replied, hurrying away as Nathaniel returned to the shrouded room. First, Nathaniel checked on Arya and saw she had drifted back to sleep. He crouched beside her, gently brushing her curls away from her face, and leaned in to press a kiss to her lips. He watched her lips stretch into a smile before getting up to find a loose dress for her. He adjusted the covers to her chest and helped her settle comfortably with the pregnancy pillow. Then he changed into black sweatpants and a hooded top. A gentle knock sounded at the door shortly after, and Nathaniel walked over to answer it without asking who it was. Anita greeted him with a warm smile. "How is she?" she whispered. "She's resting," Nathaniel replied. "Thanks for doing this," he added. "Are you serious? She's my boss, my bestie, and my sister," Anita said with Andrew chuckling behind her. Nathaniel pulled her into a side hug and stepped aside to let her enter. He then left with Andrew, and the two men took long, purposeful strides toward the elevator. In the living room downstairs, the doctors stood up as Nathaniel and Andrew walked in. Tom Hill joined them with a devilish smirk. Gray had been bombarding him with calls and threats. Tom wondered if any of those threats could be leveraged against the fool. He hoped that Gray would make a significant slip-up as he got increasingly desperate. Tom decided to take his time and return his call in an hour or two. He chuckled to himself. "Good morning, Nate," Dr. Williams greeted him with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne," echoed Dr. Rowan and Dr. Sterling. Nathaniel nodded in response. "Where's Dr. Hawthorne?" Dr. Sterling asked, glancing toward the doorway as if expecting Arya to walk in with her usual warm smile. Nathaniel sighed. "Whatever we do regarding the OPMC and Samuel Cavalier will have to be done without my wife, as she is in labor," Nathaniel announced. A moment of silence followed as everyone absorbed the news. "Oh dear," Dr. Sterling exclaimed, and immediately made to head to the exit. Dr. Rowan and Dr. Williams appeared uncertain about what to do next. "Labor?" Tom exclaimed, as if struck by a shocking revelation. "We need to get the cars. The baby supplies, Miss Everly. Bella!" He began to panic, turning in all directions. Andrew rushed to his side. "Mr. Hill, calm down, it's not at that stage yet," Andrew said, trying to soothe the older man with a hint of amusement. For someone so tough, Tom could be unexpectedly flustered when it came to delicate issues with his godson, Nathaniel Hawthorne. Okay, Tom said, nodding. He took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and then hurried away. Andrew groaned and followed him. Nathaniel watched, thinking Tom's reaction was quite dramatic and would have found it amusing if he wasn't so frightened himself. "Hold on," Nathaniel said, stopping Dr. Sterling as she was about to walk past him. "Can you explain what she meant by 'we'll go to the hospital when the pain is unbearable'?" Dr. Sterling's eyes widened. "What pain is she referring to?" she asked anxiously. "Back pain," Nathaniel replied. "Oh, she is definitely in labor," Dr. Rowan interjected. "How frequent is this back pain?" Dr. Sterling asked. "About 8 hours apart, I think. She first felt the contractions last night before we went to bed," Nathaniel said, leaving out the detail that they hadn't actually gone to sleep, but that was not relevant to the doctors. "It's good that you kept track of the time," Dr. Sterling said. "Now we just need to monitor her and see how often the pain occurs," she added. "And we can use the concierge medical unit for the delivery. It's fully equipped, so there's no need to go to the hospital," Rowan interjected. "If you need any help, Dr. Sterling, we're here for you," Dr. Williams offered. Nathaniel was grateful for the doctor's support. Rowan's point about the medical unit was valid. It would keep Arya in a familiar environment surrounded by family. Still, Nathaniel was hesitant about having Williams and Rowan in the delivery room. Nathaniel acknowledged, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. He hoped there wouldn't be a need for Rowan's expertise. Andrew returned and stood behind Nathaniel. "The whole house is aware that Dr. Hawthorne is in labor, and Mr. Hill is up in the top suite ensuring it's ready for the family," he reported. Nathaniel nodded. "Please take me to Dr. Hawthorne. I need to examine her and perform a scan," Dr. Sterling requested. "We used a regular ultrasound last time, but the 4D ultrasound at the concierge medical unit will give us a clearer view of the baby's positions and overall health," she urged. "Okay, I'll bring her down so we can head to the medical unit. That way I can also talk to Uncle Sam and ask him to go easy on you all," Nathaniel said. Everyone nodded in agreement. Nathaniel turned and left the living room, closely followed by Andrew. As they reached the foyer, he saw it packed with Hawthorne guards and staff. Alex and Ethan were trying to make their way through the crowd to reach him. What the... Nathaniel muttered in surprise. Mr. Hill's doing. As I mentioned, everyone knows Dr. Hawthorne is in labor now, Andrew said from behind him, chuckling. How's she doing, boss? Charles asked from across the room. Do we need to prepare to take her to the hospital? Aidan interjected. The foyer door burst open, and Jake rushed in, panting. Has she had the babies? He asked urgently. No, she's still in labor, a voice replied. What are you all just standing around for then? Jake yelled in frustration. It's fine, Jake. Dr. Hawthorne is okay, Nathaniel said loudly, his heart warming at the display of love and concern for his wife. We're moving her to the medical unit for a checkup now, he added. A murmur of approval rippled through the expansive foyer. What can we do? Ethan asked, as he and Alex reached Nathaniel. Anna has gone up to be with Arya, Alex informed him. Do we need a wheelchair, boss? Charles asked again. No, I'll carry her, Nathaniel replied. Turning to Ethan, he said, Can you help me keep an eye on my boys? I'm sure all the women will be focused on Arya right now. Ethan nodded. Sure, but they're upstairs with Arya now. Miss Everly took them. All right, let's get her to the medical unit, Nathaniel said, heading toward the elevator. Anton joined them just as Nathaniel, Andrew, Alex, and Ethan stepped into the elevator. Jake, Charles, Aidan, Lewis, and Jordan took the stairs, rushing upstairs. Anton maneuvered through the crowd to take the stairs as well, unconsciously looking out for Dawn Hill. He had really pushed his luck yesterday and wasn't sure what had come over him. After Mr. Hill's comical pursuit, he had ended up spending the night in Dawn's room and left early to return to his apartment. Luckily, Ms. Jonas had left the laundry passageway open for him. Anton had sheepishly grinned when the older woman shook her head at him. As he walked past her in the kitchen at 5A, shoo, he pressed a kiss to her temple, mumbling, You're a saint, before grabbing an apple and running off before she could use her spatula on him. You'd better not be playing games with her, she had warned. I wouldn't dream of it, Ma'am, he had replied with a chuckle as he left the building. Walking back toward the Hawthorne guard's apartment building, he couldn't wipe the satisfied smile from his face. He knew Tom Hill would likely want to kill him when he found out he was sweet on his daughter, but he figured he would cross that bridge when he came to it, or perhaps find another way around the damn bridge. Either way, he would deal with it, and get to the other side one way or another. When Nathaniel, Andrew, Alex, and Ethan exited the elevator, the door to the stairs opened and Jake came through, chest heaving, followed by Charles, Lewis, Jordan, and Anton. Nathaniel led them to his bedroom door and opened it to find Anna, Noria, Miss Everly, Miss Bella, and Dawn Hill, who had joined Anita in caring for Arya. Pillows had been propped behind her back, her legs were raised and supported by a pillow, and her body was covered with blankets. Liam and Owen stood on either side of the bed, while Anita gave Arya a foot rub. Nathaniel's eyes met Arya's, and she smiled warmly at him. Dad, the babies are coming, Owen announced as soon as he saw his father. Yes, son, Nathaniel replied. Mom said the babies can hear us when we talk, so I told them not to wear my mom out, or when they come out. They're going to catch these hands, Liam added, gesturing, making everyone laugh. Let's hope they heard you, Nathaniel quipped, walking to sit beside Arya on the bed. He leaned in and gave her a quick kiss on the lips. Anna came and ushered Liam and Owen away from the bed to give Nathaniel and Arya some privacy, but Anita remained at the foot of the bed, still rubbing Arya's foot. Nathaniel leaned in close to Arya and whispered, Dr. Sterling is here with Dr. Rowan and Dr. Williams. Sterling wants to conduct an examination and perform a 4D ultrasound, he said. How about we head to the medical unit? He then lifted his head to meet her gaze. Arya nodded in agreement, but Nathaniel noticed her eyelids fluttering as if she was struggling to stay awake or experiencing pain. He touched her forehead and sensed something was wrong. Ariana, sweetheart. What's wrong? Nathaniel asked softly. She's got a headache, Anita, who had been listening, interjected. Nathaniel glanced at her briefly before turning back to Arya, his face etched with concern. It's okay, baby, Arya reassured him. No, it's not. It's good that she'll be examined. The headache probably means her blood pressure is high, Anita said. Anita, please don't scare him, Arya firmly admonished. Hey, look at me, Nathaniel insisted, gently holding her face to make her meet his gaze. Don't hide anything from me. How can I help if you don't tell me what's going on? Arya felt terrible. The show of fear in his eyes made her heart constrict with emotion. I'm sorry, she whispered. The checkup is definitely a good idea, she added. Nathaniel nodded, straightened up and walked into the walk-in closet. He selected a sundress with spaghetti straps, which he knew she had set aside for this occasion, and draped it over the arm of the chair in the room. He returned to Arya, extended his hand and helped her up, carrying her into the closet. He removed her dress and put the sundress on her, avoiding her gaze. I'm sorry, Arya repeated, making him finally look at her. When did the headache start? He asked, worried that their lovemaking might have caused an issue. I woke up with a headache, but it stopped when we made love and only started again a few minutes ago, she explained. Are you being honest with me right now, babe? He asked. She nodded. So it's not because we made love, he added, his eyes intense. She shook her head in response. It's generally safe to have sex during the early stages of labor, as long as the water hasn't broken and there are no complications. Once the water breaks, though, having sex can increase the risk of infection. So our intimacy hasn't caused this. It actually helped me relax and sleep, she said softly. Nathaniel nodded, his eyes moving from her eyes to her lips and then to her chest. It's a shame we're not alone then, he murmured. Yeah, a shame, she murmured, her lashes fluttering and lips parting enticingly. Nathaniel took her lips in a searing kiss. Arya moaned into his mouth. A few minutes later, Nathaniel carried Arya out of the room, followed by Anita, Anna, Dawn, Noria, Alex, and Ethan. Miss Bella and Miss Everly stayed behind with the twins. When Arya saw the Hawthorne guards in the hallway, she smiled, tears welling up in her eyes as they clapped and cheered for her. You've got this, Dr. Hawthorne, Jake called out, making her laugh. You're a rock star, Charles added. We'll be right there with you every step of the way, Doc, Anton chimed in. One by one, the men offered words of encouragement as Nathaniel carried her past them. You shouldn't be here, Jake Darfield, Arya teased. What? Nothing in this world could have kept me away, he replied with a grin. Thank you, all of you. You're the best, she said, her voice emotional, before burying her face into the crook of Nathaniel's neck. Nathaniel briefly closed his eyes as her lips brushed against his skin. Downstairs, a round of applause echoed as Nathaniel carried her into the room. She laughed at the spectacle the Hawthorne guards had made of her labor. Dr. Sterling came along with Dr. Rowan and Dr. Williams. Soon enough, they reached the medical unit. Inside, the doctors, along with Andrew, Jake, and the rest of the men, hurried to prepare a bed for Arya. Dr. Sterling instructed the team to set up a corner for the bed, and they pulled privacy screens around it to create a temporary room. Nathaniel carefully laid Arya down on the hospital bed. With Anita's help, Dr. Sterling quickly set up the ultrasound equipment. The men stepped outside the privacy screens as Dr. Sterling sat on a stool to begin the scan, with Anita standing beside her and Nathaniel holding Arya's hand. Anita exposed Arya's abdomen, and Nathaniel helped drape a blanket over her legs, pulling it up to her hips. Dr. Sterling applied ultrasound gel to Arya's abdomen, and the image of her uterus appeared clearly on the screen. Oh no, Arya whispered as she saw the scan revealing she wasn't carrying 2 babies, but 3. The third baby was in a breech position, pressing against her spine, likely the reason for her intense lower back pain and elevated blood pressure, which was causing her headaches. Explain this to me, Dr. Sterling. How could this have been missed? Nathaniel asked, his tone laced with frustration and anger. Arya tightened her grip on Nathaniel's hand to get his attention, noticing how he was now glowering at Dr. Sterling. Let me answer that, Dr. Sterling, Arya offered. The other woman nodded with relief. Turning to Nathaniel, she said, Remember, I only had a few scans throughout the pregnancy, and most of them were done in the early stages. Because of the security issues we faced, I couldn't follow up as regularly as I should have. Besides, this is a 4D scan. It's more reliable than the standard ones. The last scan, which detected the breach, may have missed the third baby due to their clustered position. He could have been hiding behind the placenta or one of his brothers. And they share one amniotic sac, Arya explained, with Dr. Sterling and Anita nodding in agreement. It's not unusual. Frustrating, but not unusual, Arya said. Her voice softened as she added, "Now I just hope he's okay. It's, Actually, Dr. Sterling corrected gently. Arya let out a shaky breath, looking away as tears spilled from her eyes. Nathaniel couldn't help but feel like this was somehow his fault. What do we do? Is the baby all right? He rasped, his voice thick with emotion. Nathaniel didn't miss Dr. Sterling's hesitation before she spoke. She, has a nuchal cord, meaning the umbilical cord is wrapped around her neck, and she's positioned sideways. Her brothers are in favorable positions for a natural delivery, although this baby here, she pointed to one of the babies on her left, might present a bit more of a challenge because he's in another type of breech position with his legs set to come out first. It's possible that once the boys are delivered, the girl's position could correct itself and she might still be delivered vaginally. But as of now, she's in a breech position and has the nuchal cord. She repeated for emphasis, then added, "And there are 3 of them," she finished, glancing at Nathaniel before her worried gaze settled on Arya, her brows furrowed with concern. Nathaniel nodded, understanding that this could mean a cesarean section might be necessary to safely deliver the babies. "Besides all that, is she okay?" Nathaniel asked, wanting all the facts before making any life-altering decisions. Surgery might be routine for doctors, but even the smallest operations carry risks. "She's notably smaller than her brothers," Dr. Sterling said as she pulled up the ultrasound results Anita handed to her. "But according to the scan, she is healthy. Now, speaking of size, there's something else we need to consider. The babies are all quite large, which is good for their overall health, but it complicates the delivery. Based on the ultrasound measurements, the boys are estimated to weigh around 6 pounds each, and the girl about 5, which is above average for triplets. That means you're carrying nearly 17 pounds of baby, Dr. Hawthorne." Nathaniel shut his eyes briefly, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Dr. Sterling continued, her voice steady but serious. Directing her gaze at Nathaniel, Dr. Sterling added, "Dr. Hawthorne's pelvic structure is relatively small, and with the size of the babies, there's a concern about cephalopelvic disproportion, where the babies' heads or bodies might be too large to pass through the birth canal. This could make a natural delivery, particularly for the girl, very difficult, especially since she's still breech." She paused, giving them a moment to process. "These factors could lead to prolonged labor, fetal distress, or the risk of shoulder dystocia, which could complicate delivery for both the babies and Dr. Hawthorne." Nathaniel acknowledged this with a nod and turned to look at Arya, whose eyes were closed as she turned her head to the side. "Let's give them a minute, Doctor," Anita said to Dr. Sterling. The other woman nodded and stood. Before Anita left, she moved to the side of the bed, brushing her hand over Arya's temple, gently coaxing her to open her eyes. Arya's eyes welled with tears. "I don't know why you're crying. You're going to have the baby girl you've always wanted," Anita teased, though she too had tears in her eyes. Arya laughed softly, tears still streaming down her cheeks. "I'm going to jump the gun and say congratulations, bestie. You freaking superhuman, you carried 3 babies. Wait till Liam finds out," she added, making Arya laugh even more. "Thank you, Anita," Nathaniel rasped, deeply moved by how Anita's quirky personality always seemed to get through to Arya. "Thank you," Arya whispered to Anita. She nodded in acknowledgement to Nathaniel and Arya before blowing Arya a kiss, and then she left. Nathaniel settled into a chair beside Arya's bed, taking her small, slender hand in his and raising it to his lips. He gently kissed the center of her palm, the back of her hand, and each of her fingers, his eyes locked onto hers with a pleading intensity. "Please don't hate me, my love," he whispered against her skin. "Come here," Arya murmured, opening her arms. Nathaniel climbed onto the bed, enveloping her in a hug as she clung to him, burying her face in his chest. He buried his face in her hair until she tilted her head back to meet his gaze. Nathaniel pressed a soft kiss to her lips. "I love you, Ariana," he whispered. "And I love you, Nathan. Please don't blame yourself for this. You were only trying to protect our family, and I should have been more aware. My reservations about modern interventions in pregnancy were likely affecting me more than I realized. There are so many illnesses now that weren't common before, which makes me wary of medications and treatments that are meant to help but can sometimes do more harm than good. If anyone should be blamed, it's me. Her voice trailed off as tears began to fall. Nathaniel tightened his embrace, kissing her face and tasting the salty tears as he did. "Let's not place blame," he said softly, a faint smile touching his lips. "What matters is that you want us to have healthy babies. Dr. Sterling said they're all healthy little giants, except for our little girl," he added with a hint of humor, trying to lighten the mood. Arya became even more emotional at his words, especially at the mention of our little girl. "I can't believe I've been carrying 3 babies. And a girl too, Nathan. I don't want to lose her," she whispered, her voice breaking as fresh tears filled her eyes. "Shh," Nathaniel soothed, pressing his forehead gently against hers. "It's such a beautiful thing. I'm eager for us to hold all 3 of them," he whispered, his voice soothing and deep. Arya could sense the unspoken message in his words. He would support any steps necessary to ensure the baby's safety, but not at her expense. Her heart swelled with love for him, but she also wanted all their babies to be delivered safely. Nathaniel sighed. He knew what Arya expected from him, but he wanted to explore the natural delivery option before considering any more drastic measures. Arya felt another surge of pain gripping her back, causing her to stiffen. She grabbed onto Nathaniel for support, trying to stifle her grunt, but couldn't hold it in. "Ah," she moaned. Nathaniel's heart raced. Dr. Sterling and Anita, who had been just outside the privacy screens, hurried back into the room. "Another wave of pain?" Dr. Sterling asked, her concern evident. "Uh-huh," Arya answered through gritted teeth. "It's picking up then. The last contraction was about 2 hours ago," Anita noted. 2 hours, Nathaniel echoed, his heart pounding. This meant the delivery was approaching faster than he had expected. "What's the plan, Mr. and Dr. Hawthorne? Shall we prepare for a cesarean, or are we sticking with a natural delivery?" Dr. Sterling inquired. Arya took a deep breath and met Nathaniel's gaze, holding it steady. "Tell me what you want," he whispered, his fear palpable. "We'll try the natural delivery while Dr. Sterling monitors the babies. If it becomes clear that a natural delivery isn't feasible, we'll proceed with the operation," Arya decided. Nathaniel exhaled shakily. Arya could feel him trembling, silently noting that this was likely Nathaniel's preference. They were both scared, and Arya knew she had to stay strong for them. "I love you," he murmured as he kissed her. Arya nodded, cupping his jaw with her hand before kissing him in return. "All right then, let's start with some exercises, Dr. Hawthorne, shall we?" Dr. Sterling said. Arya chuckled, particularly when Nathaniel looked at Dr. Sterling as if she had lost her mind. "You expect her to leave the bed?" he asked, still holding on tightly to her. "Oh yes," Anita confirmed. "If we want a smooth and quick delivery, we need to put in some effort," she added. They managed to persuade Nathaniel to step aside while the 2 women helped Arya out of bed. Nathaniel watched anxiously as Arya grinned and groaned throughout the process. He stood by with clenched fists, wondering how long he could stay on the sidelines without stepping in. "Mr. Hawthorne?" Rowan's voice broke through Nathaniel's thoughts. He blinked, returning to full awareness of his surroundings. Stepping out of the makeshift delivery room, he noticed that the privacy screens had been arranged to create a narrow pathway, indicating that Anita and Dr. Sterling did not rejoin the others when they stepped out, which meant the rest of the group still did not know what was happening. He walked through the opening in the screens and saw Dr. Williams, Dr. Rowan, Alex, Ethan, Anna, Noria, Jake, Aidan, Jordan, Anton, Charles, Andrew, and Tom Hill standing around at their side of the unit. Beyond them, Nathaniel saw privacy screens strategically positioned to separate the unit and keep the Kimuras isolated at the far end. "Are there complications?" Rowan asked, his worry evident as he stepped forward with Dr. Williams, Tom, Andrew, and Jake. Nathaniel nodded, figuring there was no point in keeping that aspect to himself. After all, if Sterling decided to operate, he would prefer Rowan to either supervise or perform the surgery himself. Dr. Sterling mentioned there's a possibility of a cesarean, and I should prepare myself for it, he said, omitting certain details. Then we should prepare, Dr. Williams responded, and Nathaniel nodded. At that moment, his priority wasn't the fact that male doctors might see his wife unclothed, but ensuring his family's well-being. The two doctors hurried away, leaving Nathaniel with Tom Hill, Andrew, Jake, Alex, Ethan, Aidan, Anton, Dawn, Noria, and Anna. The rest of the men had gone to wait outside. The 10 of them circled around him, with Anna stepping forward to give Nathaniel a comforting hug. She and the twins are going to be fine. Arya is strong. You'll see, Anna reassured him. Nathaniel nodded, his heart aching at the hesitation to tell his friends that Arya was carrying triplets, not twins. The fear of losing the little girl haunted him. Thank you, Anna, Nathaniel rasped. Alex pulled him into a hug next, followed by Ethan. Is it even safe to operate here? Ethan asked with a worried frown. I'm sure the doctors will figure something out. Dr. Rowan is an excellent surgeon, Anna replied. Nathaniel nodded in agreement. Just then, Arya's loud grunt from behind the privacy screens struck him like a whiplash, and he turned in that direction, his expression tightening with concern. It's going to get worse. You have to brace yourself, Nate, Tom Hill warned, drawing Nathaniel's attention back to him. They could give her an epidural for the pain, Anna suggested, her brows furrowed with concern. I think we'd have to hold her down for that to happen, Dr. Rowan interjected with a polite smile as he walked past them, Dr. Williams following close behind. She doesn't believe in the unnatural administration of medication during pregnancy, Dr. Williams added with a proud smile. This is going to be an excruciating wait then, Tom murmured. Let's set up a sitting area outside and clear the unit, Jake suggested. Good idea, Charles agreed. I'll see to it, he said and left, with Aidan and Anton following him. I'm going to have a bottle of brandy brought over, Tom added as he strode away. Tom, a word, Nathaniel called, excusing himself. He exchanged a silent glance with Jake and Andrew, conveying a message without words. Before following Tom, Andrew then ushered everyone else outside. Nathaniel and Tom stepped into the cold, with the others trailing a few meters behind, led by Andrew and Jake. Once outside, Tom stepped away to quickly cool the kitchen while the others busied themselves setting up camp at a safe distance from the unit. When Tom finished his call, he walked over to Nathaniel, who stood a few inches away. Andrew and Jake joined them, standing beside Nathaniel. Andrew mentioned earlier that you were preparing my parents' suite for us to move into, Nathaniel asked Tom. Yes, Miss Jonas is overseeing the setup, just like she did for Liam and Owen, Tom responded. We're going to need one more room though, Tom, just in case, Nathaniel added, his voice trembling with emotion. One more room? Just in case of what? Tom asked, his eyes filled with worry. We're expecting 3 babies, not 2, Nathaniel revealed quietly. The 3 men stared at him in stunned silence. Andrew was the first to speak. Wait, what? Did you just say 3? He asked, his mouth hanging open. Nathaniel nodded and went on to explain about the baby girl. By the time he was finished, tears were streaming down his face. Jake handed him a handkerchief, feeling a familiar ache in his chest. He understood all too well how Nathaniel must be feeling. I didn't want to announce it because... Nathaniel's voice trailed off, unable to continue. Tom gave him a reassuring pat on the back. It's okay, son. We understand, Tom said, his own eyes glistening with tears. Dr. Hawthorne is strong. She'll make it through this. She has to, Jake added, his voice filled with determination. Andrew remained silent, unable to trust himself to speak. After Nathaniel asked him to keep things discreet, Tom headed off to arrange the extra room. Nathaniel re-entered the building, his heart heavy as Arya's pained groans filled the air. He reminded himself that she was in the hands of 3 capable doctors and a devoted nurse who loved her deeply. Repeating that thought in his mind gave him just enough strength to keep going. He made his way across the unit toward the Kimuras, passing the privacy screens that were lined up like a barrier. He caught sight of Sean and Samuel Cavalier, awake and propped up on pillows. There you are, Samuel Cavalier greeted him with a weary smile. The father-to-be, he added with a nod. Congratulations, Hawthorne, Sean chimed in. Thanks, Sean, Nathaniel replied. As he walked over to Samuel Cavalier's bed, he pulled a chair closer and sat down. How long are you going to let her endure that pain? You could just have them open her up and bring out the little Hawthorns, Samuel joked. We're trying to keep it simple, but if it becomes necessary, we'll go for it, Nathaniel said, managing to sound composed. If you say so, Samuel replied. I heard you requested Dr. Hawthorne's presence before letting the other doctors review your evaluation report, Nathaniel said, raising an eyebrow. The older man shrugged. Sorry if I hurt their feelings, he said, causing Nathaniel to chuckle. Dr. Hawthorne just has a way of making my condition seem less severe, unlike Rowan. He's so... blunt? Sean interjected, earning a sharp look from his grandfather. He chuckled weakly. I'll wait for her to join the team. I'm not in a rush, Samuel said. Well, I am, Sean said as he started to stand. I need to get back on my feet. I've got commissions waiting, he added. You're still going forward with your photography? Nathaniel asked with interest. I love what I do, Hawthorne. I'm sure you can understand that, Sean replied. Nathaniel nodded. I respect your dedication, he said. Yeah, well, Sean muttered as he managed to stand and took slow, careful steps away. You know, you could just use a wheelchair, his grandfather called after him. Sean waved it off and kept walking. He's stubborn, Samuel said affectionately. He's bored, Nathaniel replied, making the older man chuckle. He's the best of us all, Samuel murmured to himself. Suddenly, Arya's scream tore through the air, and Nathaniel's fists clenched so tightly that his nails nearly dug into his palms. When he heard her shout, "No, I can do this!" he threw an apologetic glance at Samuel. I've got to go, Nathaniel said. Go on, Nate, go be with your wife, the old man replied with a smile. Nathaniel hurried to the entrance of the privacy screens. Stepping inside, he saw Arya perched on the bed, gripping the edge with both hands. Her hair was a disheveled mess, her curls falling in unruly waves across her shoulders and face. When she lifted her head, the curls obscured her vision and she was trembling. Nathaniel's brows furrowed in concern. Why is my wife shaking like that? He asked the doctors, who were standing to the side, seemingly hesitant to approach her. Only Anita was close, clutching a pillow as if it were a shield. Nathan, Arya called softly when she heard his voice. He crossed the room to her, gently brushing her hair away from her face, and without thinking began to braid it. He looked into her eyes, glazed with pain. I think it's the pain, Dr. Sterling explained. She appears cold, but she won't let us examine her. I don't want injections, Arya insisted. Honey, maybe we should let them at least evaluate you. I'll be right here, and I won't let them do anything we don't agree on. Okay, Nathaniel reassured her. Okay, Arya repeated, her mind clouded by pain, and Nathaniel grew increasingly worried as he watched her shaking. Gently, he lifted her into his arms and laid her down sideways on the bed. Dr. Sterling and Anita immediately stepped forward, checking her vitals and examining how dilated she was. They performed another scan, and Dr. Sterling exchanged a look with Anita and Nathaniel. Nothing had changed. The babies were still in the same position. Nathaniel pressed a kiss on Arya's forehead before locking eyes with Anita in silent communication. He knew Arya might hate him for this, but he couldn't bear to watch her suffer any longer. Anita gave a subtle signal to Dr. Sterling, who nodded in understanding. Nathaniel leaned over Arya, drawing her focus to him. We've barely started, honey, and I can't stand seeing you like this any moment longer. Arya's body shook with tears. I can do this, Nathan, she whispered. I know you can, but I don't want you to anymore. I know these are our babies, he said, placing his hand gently over her swollen belly, but you are my wife, and I want my wife safe. Do you understand? Arya closed her eyes, understanding dawning. It's time, babe, he added. Arya nodded in agreement, her body still trembling. Nathaniel pressed a quick kiss to her lips, then intertwined his fingers with hers as the doctors, along with Anita, began preparing her. I'm going to be right here, Nathaniel said, smiling at her through the tears welling in his eyes as he knelt by the bed, clutching her hands tightly. Don't leave me, baby, he pleaded. Arya nodded, still shaking uncontrollably. Breathe in and out and stay with me, Nathaniel urged, his voice thick with emotion. Dr. Sterling, Anita, Dr. Williams, and Rowan worked swiftly to arrange the necessary tools, preparing for the surgery to begin. Anita carefully draped a sterile cloth over Arya, covering her from the hips downward, leaving only her stomach exposed while ensuring her upper body remained modestly covered. Nathaniel watched everyone like a hawk, noting every action, every person involved, and every detail of the setup. He stayed on Arya's side, his heart pounding in his chest, but his hands were firm and steady as he held hers, determined not to let her see how terrified he truly was. His sole focus was on keeping her calm. "All right, Dr. Hawthorne, I know you're familiar with the procedure, but I'll still be communicating with you throughout to make sure you're with us every step of the way," Dr. Sterling said gently, her tone both professional and reassuring. "And if you have any objections, feel free to speak up, boss. Just remember, Dr. Rowan is here, and if anything goes wrong, it's all on him," she quipped, making the doctors laugh. Nathaniel watched as Arya's lips curled into a small smile, and he leaned in to press a kiss on her forehead. "Every drug we're going to administer comes from Farmer Hawthorne, and you know how thorough they are, so rest assured we've taken your no harmful drugs preferences into account," Dr. Sterling added with a smile. Nathaniel chuckled despite himself, a brief moment of levity breaking through his worry. "All right now, we're going to give you an epidural to numb the area we'll be operating on. You'll be awake throughout the procedure, and while you may feel some pressure, you shouldn't experience any pain. If you feel anything sharp, let us know right away." Arya, still trembling slightly, nodded, her grip on Nathaniel's hand tightening. "I'm here," he whispered, kissing the tip of her nose. "I'm not going anywhere," he added, his voice low and reassuring. Anita moved closer with Dr. Williams, who was acting as the anesthesiologist. He carefully administered the epidural, and although Arya winced slightly, she kept her eyes locked on Nathaniel's face. Nathaniel shot a sharp glare in Dr. Williams's direction, causing Arya to smile as she studied him with a loving gaze, finding comfort in his presence. As the medication began to take effect, her body gradually relaxed, and she let out a calming breath. Dr. Sterling and Dr. Rowan stood at the foot of the bed, now masked and gloved, their surgical tools gleaming in the bright light. Nathaniel noticed Rowan lean in and whispering something to Dr. Sterling, and when she nodded, the two switched positions. Nathaniel deduced that Rowan had asked to take the lead in the surgery. Anita and Dr. Williams adjusted the privacy screen, ensuring that Arya and Nathaniel were shielded from directly witnessing the incision. "We're starting now, Dr. Hawthorne. You're doing great," Dr. Rowan said, his voice calm and soothing. Anita watched as Rowan deftly made the first incision, creating a fine line across Arya's abdomen. She swallowed hard as blood lined the opening, letting out a shaky breath. She had spent years witnessing surgeries like this, but today was different. This was her dear friend under the knife, her life and that of her babies hanging in the balance. Her heart raced, and her palms grew clammy. Tears threatened to blur her vision, but she shook her head sharply, forcing herself to stay focused. Arya and Nathaniel were counting on her to be strong, to ensure Arya's safety, and that's exactly what she was determined to do. Nathaniel kept his eyes on Arya's face, carefully observing every flicker of emotion that passed over her features. She was awake, fully aware of what was happening, but her gaze never left his. "I'm scared to make you laugh, so I'll keep all my thoughts to myself right now," Nathaniel quipped softly. Arya smiled, her expression gentle despite the tension in the room. "What thoughts?" she asked, her voice raspy and low. "I can't tell you," he replied, grinning as he gently stroked her temple with his thumb. "So I'll have to pick a more serious topic instead." He smiled. "Chicken," Arya whispered. Nathaniel chuckled, pressing a gentle kiss to her lips as he noted that her trembling had eased. "Thank you for that very childish remark, but I'm going to be the bigger person and ignore it," he quipped. Arya's smile widened. "Is that your way of saying you'll get me back later?" she teased. "Oh, that's for certain, my love. Don't I always?" he rasped, his voice soft and his gaze a tender gleam. His entire body was coiled with tension, half of his focus on what was happening on the other side of the screen, but he still managed to keep Arya distracted from the prodding and tugging that made her flinch periodically. "We've been so busy with everything, we haven't actually discussed names for the boys," he said, gently stroking her cheekbone. "We'll have to pick one for them and our little girl now," he added softly. Arya nodded, her lips trembling. Was thinking maybe we could go with nature-inspired names like Ash, Sage, and Ivy, she replied with a shaky smile. Nathaniel beamed at her. Those are cool names, way better than Michelson, he teased. Arya cleared her throat, trying to stifle a laugh. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Liam is a treasure, he added fondly. Arya smiled, nodding. Any other suggestions? He encouraged. We could try classic ones like Sebastian, Alexander, and Isabella, but then Ethan would never let me hear the end of it. And if we go with Ethan, Lucas, and Olivia, Alexander might feel left out. I'm trying not to hurt anyone, she said, her voice soft and low. Nathaniel chuckled, nodding in understanding. I actually like Isabella. I think it would be perfect for our little girl. Especially if she had your eyes, he whispered, pressing another kiss to her lips. Arya's eyes were a swirl of emotions, glistening with sadness, hope, and tentative joy. Let's hear your ideas, she invited. For the boys, I was thinking Landon and Mason. They sound pretty trendy, he admitted, sounding a bit sheepish. Arya's eyes widened. They actually sound sweet, I like them. A lot, she said with a smile. What about our girl? She asked, her voice heavy with feelings. How about Esme? He replied in almost a whisper. It's, poetic. But I think Isabella sounds adorable too, and I think it's only fair that you get to name her, he added, his eyes dark and intense. Arya opened her mouth to respond, but suddenly jolted from the pressure of a firm tug. Nathaniel's breath hitched as he glanced over at the doctors. His heart stopped as he watched Dr. Rowan lean forward, his hands disappearing for a moment before he straightened his spine, holding the first baby, a boy, in his hands. Dear God, Nathaniel whispered. Here is your first triplet, Mr. and Dr. Hawthorne. Dr. Rowan announced softly, holding the baby up briefly before passing him to Dr. Sterling. Dr. Sterling took the baby, her eyes crinkling with a smile as she quickly examined him, checking his vitals and clearing his nose and ears of any mucus. She then handed the baby to Anita, who swiftly wrapped him in a soft blanket. The baby's tiny cries filled the room as Anita brought him closer for Arya and Nathaniel to see. Nathaniel's eyes filled with tears as Anita placed the baby on Arya's chest. Arya, with a trembling hand, gently patted his back, making soothing, cooing sounds. When she looked up at Nathaniel, he smiled and said, "He's perfect." Before leaning in to kiss her temple, her eyes, glistening with tears, sparkled as she looked from him to their son. Nathaniel reached out to touch the baby, but hesitated, irrationally concerned that his hands, which might have been exposed to germs, could affect his precious newborn. He slowly withdrew, choosing instead to watch and smile at the little miracle Arya had just given him. "Let me clean him up," Anita whispered as she took the baby to a corner of the makeshift area. She quickly cleaned him and attached a tag to his tiny wrist to mark him as the first to be born. Anita smiled warmly at the precious bundle while Arya watched her every move with affectionate eyes. Meanwhile, Dr. Rowan continued without pause, carefully maneuvering to deliver the second baby. Soon the second boy was brought into view. "The second baby is out," Dr. Rowan announced, holding up the little boy briefly. This time Nathaniel couldn't hold back his tears, overwhelmed by the significance of the moment. He's gotten 4 sons now. Dr. Sterling received the second baby, who let out a small wail as he was wrapped up and brought to join his brother. Nathaniel squeezed Arya's hand and she looked at him, tears barely held back. "You're so strong, my love. I'm so proud of you," Nathaniel said, kissing her hand. Their focus quickly shifted back to Dr. Rowan, who was now concentrating on the last baby, their daughter. A heavy silence enveloped the room, broken only by the gentle cooing of the 2 boys, who were still undecided whether to keep crying or settle down. Dr. Williams joined Dr. Rowan, and together they worked on the 3rd baby, which was the one with the nuchal cord and was also in a breech position. The soft clinking of metal, the rustling of surgical gowns, and the steady beeping of monitors formed a tense background symphony, mixed with the sounds of the baby boys. Arya winced as she felt increased pressure, her breath coming in shallow pants. "You're doing great, baby," Nathaniel whispered, stroking her hair back from her forehead. "Focus on me, it's going to be fine," he reassured her. Anita, now watching over the 2 baby boys, observed Dr. Rowan's intense concentration as he carefully adjusted his grip. Moving to get a better view of the third baby, her fear intensified when she saw the cord wrapped around the little girl's neck. "It's not too tight, but we need to act quickly," Dr. Rowan murmured to Dr. Williams. The two of them then gently worked to unwrap the umbilical cord from the baby's neck, each movement made with extreme caution. Anita held her breath. After what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Rowan gave a small nod. Dr. Williams then carefully freed the baby's head from the cord, and with one final gentle tug, the baby girl was born. Instead of passing the baby to Dr. Sterling, Dr. Williams held her upside down and gave her a firm but gentle smack on the back. The room seemed to hold its breath for a moment before the tiniest, most delicate cry filled the air. Nathaniel released a shaky breath he hadn't realized he was holding, his entire body trembling with relief. Oh God, Arya repeated, her voice quivering. "She's beautiful," Dr. Williams said softly, holding the baby girl up for them to see. Although smaller than her brothers, Nathaniel thought she looked perfect in every way. Her soft cries were the most beautiful sounds he had ever heard. Anita, as if emerging from a trance, quickly approached to take the baby. With tears in her eyes, she tenderly wrapped the little girl and brought her to Arya. "Here she is, your daughter," Anita said softly, her own tears flowing as she placed the tiny bundle in Arya's arms. Arya looked down at the baby girl, her tears finally spilling over. "Hey there, Esme Isabella Hawthorne. Welcome, my darling," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Nathaniel, overwhelmed with love, leaned down and kissed both of them, his wife and then his little girl. "You did it," he murmured against her hair, his voice thick with emotion. "You brought them all safely into the world," his voice shook uncontrollably. Arya smiled through her tears, cradling the tiny girl against her chest. "We did it," she corrected him, her voice low and tender. Anita quickly left and returned with the two boys who were now clean and swaddled, their tiny faces serene as they were placed on either side of their mother. Nathaniel looked down at his family, his wife and their 3 beautiful children. His heart swelled with a love so intense it almost hurt. However, the doctors gathering at the foot of the bed reminded him it wasn't over. The babies were safe, and now it was his wife's turn. He watched as the doctors worked to close the incision. The atmosphere in the room grew calmer and quieter, and even Dr. Rowan seemed more at ease. Nathaniel remembered that the other doctor had been infatuated with his wife and must have felt a lot of pressure throughout the procedure. It made sense that Rowan had requested to take over to ensure everything went perfectly. Nathaniel realized that Arya's impact on him was profound. His jealousy seemed trivial now compared to his concern for her well-being. What mattered most was that she was cared for, regardless of who performed the surgery. He turned to Arya as she gently brushed his face, her warm smile comforting him. "It's fine, baby, I'm fine. They did a good job," she reassured him. "I doubt they had much choice with Anita hovering and the squad of Hawthorne guards outside. They must have known their very lives were on the line," Nathaniel quipped. Arya cleared her throat to stifle a laugh. He grinned at her and turned his face into the hand she held to his face, kissing the inside of her palm. "Once she heals, the incision will hardly be noticeable," Nathaniel heard Dr. Rowan say. The comment about his wife's incision brought Nathaniel's jealousy back to the surface. Perhaps he hadn't entirely overcome it. Growth, it seemed, was gradual. He clenched his jaw before redirecting his gaze at the doctors. Anita and Dr. Sterling then took over, while Dr. Rowan and Dr. Williams stepped back. The two women cleaned Arya up and wrapped her in bandages. Anita then hurried to a bag in the corner of the room and retrieved a gown for Arya to change into. "Congratulations, Nate. Congratulations, Dr. Hawthorne," Dr. Williams said as he and Rowan removed the shield. He strode over to give Nathaniel a pat on the back. Rowan stood back, his gaze shifting from the babies nestled against Arya's chest and sides, then settling on her face. His eyes locked and held hers. A smile spread across his face. "Thank you," Arya whispered softly. The other doctor nodded in acknowledgement. Damn idiot, Nathaniel thought, but he forced a polite nod when Rowan added, "Congratulations, Mr. Hawthorne." He knew he ought to say something polite, at least to the man, so then he hesitated for a moment, willing the rational part of his mind to take over. "Thank you, Rowan. I appreciate your expertise. And you too, Dr. Williams." "Thank you, Dr. Sterling," he said, Then turning to Anita, he extended his arm and she quickly moved over to give him a side hug. Nathaniel pressed a fond kiss on her forehead. "Thank you, Anita," he said sincerely. The sound of the boys gearing up for a good cry made everyone chuckle. All right, all right. The attention is back on you, my little lovelies," Anita teased as Dr. Sterling, Dr. Williams, and Rowan helped carry the babies while Nathaniel and Anita assisted Arya in changing. "Lift her while I change the bedding," Anita instructed, and Nathaniel carefully lifted Arya into his arms. Their eyes locked, the love they felt for each other clear in their gaze. "I'm going to pamper you, silly," he promised. She giggled, pressing her face into the crook of his neck. "You can put her down now," Anita said with a smile, watching them. Nathaniel, taking his time, gently lowered Arya back onto the bed. The babies were then placed beside her with the baby girl resting on her chest. "We'll perform some more extensive tests on Dr. Hawthorne and the babies shortly, but I can confidently say both mother and children are perfectly healthy," Dr. Sterling said to Nathaniel, her voice catching with emotion. "Thank you," Arya responded gratefully. "Should we move them to the house?" Anita asked. Nathaniel suddenly remembered the people waiting outside, eager to hear the news of the safe delivery. Just as the thought crossed his mind, the boys began to fidget, their soft but piercing cries filling the room. Their sister scrunched up her face as though annoyed. Nathaniel's heart swelled with love as he watched them. Arya, who had been quietly observing him, spoke up. "Would you like to hold her while I try to feed the boys?" she asked softly. Nathaniel blinked, feeling a wave of fear at the request. "Hold her?" he repeated, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Uh-huh," Arya said, smiling warmly at him. "Father-daughter bonding starts now," Anita added with a wink, as she carefully lifted the little girl and handed her to Nathaniel. Dr. Sterling guided him on how to hold his arms, and Nathaniel nervously followed suit. When Anita placed the tiny bundle in his arms, he was struck by how small and fragile she seemed. His eyes roamed over her small head, full of soft curls, her tiny nose and delicate face, and his heart swelled with an overwhelming mix of emotions. "Would you like to go introduce her to the family?" Arya asked gently. Nathaniel nodded, smiling, and then slowly started to walk away, cradling his daughter safely in his arms. "He's in big trouble with that one," Anita quipped, causing the others to laugh. Dr. Sterling shooed Dr. Williams and Dr. Rowan out, while she and Anita framed Arya's bed, helping her feed the boys. Meanwhile, Nathaniel stepped out from behind the privacy shield and headed toward the exit, his attention completely captivated by his little girl. He used his index finger to gently trace her tiny nose, thinking how much she resembled Arya. His heart skipped a beat when her face curled into a soft smile and she wrapped her tiny fingers around his finger. As he stepped outside, the cool breeze brushed against her exposed skin and her brows creased in irritation. He chuckled softly just as she opened her eyes. Nathaniel froze in his tracks as he looked down at the most beautiful shade of grey staring up at him. "Oh dear, Arya is going to kill me," he muttered with a grin. "Boss?" Andrew's voice snapped him back to his surroundings. Lifting his gaze, Nathaniel saw the smiling faces of his friends and family, all beaming with emotion. "I'd like you all to meet my daughter," Nathaniel announced, his voice thick with feelings. "My first daughter, my little girl, the third of the triplets my wife just gifted me, Esme Isabella Hawthorne." Tears blurred his vision as he spoke. There was a brief moment of silence before the group erupted in cheers. Just then, Liam and Owen arrived, squeezing through the crowd with their big mama and grandma Bella. Seeing the celebration ahead, they hurried forward, eager to join them. Ethan and Alex lifted them up so they could see better. Nathaniel leaned in, tapping the tips of their noses, his heart overflowing with love. "Want to meet your little sister?" he asked softly. Owen and Liam exchanged puzzled glances. "A sister?" Owen repeated in disbelief. Nathaniel chuckled and quickly explained the surprising news of their hidden third baby, who turned out to be a girl. "A girl?" Liam echoed, his face reflecting pure dismay. "Uh-huh," Nathaniel said, crouching down so the boys could see her tiny face. "She's so little," Owen said, his tone a mix of awe and confusion. "All babies are. You were once this little too," Anna replied with a smile. "Uh-huh," Owen responded. "Uh-huh," Liam echoed. The two looked utterly overwhelmed. Liam then exchanged a glance with Owen, and without warning, the two wiggled down from their uncle's arms and ran off, yelling, "No!" The adults burst into laughter. Jake, standing beside Nathaniel, gazed down at the adorable bundle in his arms. She looked so beautiful that his heart constricted with a mix of emotions. Silently, he prayed that soon he'd also get to hold his own babies. "May I?" he rasped, catching Nathaniel's attention. Nathaniel smiled and gently passed Esme to him. Jake's heart trembled in his chest as the baby smiled, her long curled lashes fluttering open. "Oh boy," Ethan murmured with a bright smile. Jake thought she looked like the female version of her father, with the same intense, piercing grey eyes set in her small, adorable face. Or Anna, Noria, and Dawn cooed in delight. Ms. Everly, Miss Bella, Tom Hill, Andrew, Charles, and Aidan circled around Jake and Nathaniel, all eager to see the Hawthorne treasure. "What about her brothers, boss?" Andrew asked. "Can we see Aria now? I hope she's fine too. And the boys?" Miss Everly inquired with concern. "Does she need anything?" Miss Bella asked. "Can she eat yet, boss?" Miss Jonas chimed in. Nathaniel chuckled and, directing his gaze at Miss Everly and Miss Bella, replied, "I suppose you can go inside and find out. Anita is there with Dr. Sterling." "Can I join them too, boss?" Miss Jonas quickly added. "Of course, Miss Jonas," Nathaniel responded. "I'm going in too," Anna announced, dragging Noria along with her. "We should probably take Esme back inside. It's mighty cold out here," Miss Everly suggested. Jake nodded. But instead of handing the baby over, he turned and headed inside. Everyone chuckled. "Congratulations, man. She's so adorable," Alex said, offering Nathaniel a handshake. Ethan followed suit, saying, "Man, that was intense. It's scary how many times we all still have to go through that. But God, Nathaniel, 3 babies at once. You damn freak," he quipped. Nathaniel shook with laughter. He knew Ethan's somber and civil demeanor wouldn't last. He was just waiting for him to say something outrageous. "I'm just glad they're all fine. And my Ariana," Nathaniel rasped. Aidan, Andrew, Charles, Jordan, and Anton, watching from the sidelines, smiled in acknowledgement. "Do we have names for the boys yet, Nate?" Tom asked with interest. "The first twin is Landon and the second is Mason," Nathaniel replied with a proud smile. "Those are pretty classic names," Tom remarked with approval. "I agree. Landon Hawthorne and Mason Hawthorne. Sounds just right," Alex chimed in. "Agreed," Ethan added, nodding. "When do we get to see Dr. Hawthorne and the boys, boss?" One of the Hawthorne guards called from the back. Nathaniel chuckled. "Patience, Kent. Help me grab Liam and Owen first. I think their cry of terror has lasted long enough," he quipped. "Lewis and Adam are already going after them," Andrew said, laughing. From where they stood, they could still hear the 2 boys running around in the snow-covered plains, shouting, "No!" and listing all the things they needed to get rid of to protect little Esme. Their little faces flushed from the cold and excitement, their voices echoing across the grounds. "We have to get rid of the Legos," Liam shouted, wide-eyed. "Esme might swallow them. And then what? Boom! Disaster!" Lewis and Adam stood off to the side, shaking their heads, barely able to contain their laughter. "And the crayons!" Owen yelled, his hands flailing dramatically. "What if she tries to eat them? Babies put everything in their mouths." Liam gasped as though struck by the realization. "We can't let that happen. All the crayons must go." Panting from all the running, Owen added, "And the books. She could pull the books off the shelves and—" He mimed the books toppling over in exaggerated fashion. "Crash, baby Esme buried under a mountain of books." Liam nodded fervently. "Oh yeah, she's so little. And what about the forks? What if she somehow gets a fork and pokes herself, Owen? We've got to get rid of those too." Lewis, chuckling, chimed in. "You guys are seriously going to toss all the forks? So what? We're eating with our hands now?" Adam grinned, amused. "Sounds like a plan. But you two better be the ones telling Mom and Dad," he teased. "You don't understand. We have to protect her from everything," Liam protested, his voice insistent. "All right, love, the big brother energy," Lewis said with a smirk, "but it's time to head inside. It's freezing out here." He strode over, scooping the boys up effortlessly, one in each arm. Adam joined him, and together they made their way back, rejoining the others as Liam and Owen continued their breathless chatter. Adam chuckled at their determination. "Gotta admire the commitment," he muttered, shaking his head with a grin. Funny how you're all about protecting baby Esme, Lewis remarked. But what about your little baby brothers? They need protection too, but boys are stronger, right, Uncle Adam? Liam asked, looking up for confirmation. We're strong, Owen chimed in support. Even little baby boys are just as vulnerable, Adam replied with a grin. Wait till you see them. Owen let out a heavy sigh as if the weight of the world suddenly rested on his small shoulders. Don't worry, Owen. We'll protect the babies together. Uncle Jake will help. And Uncle Andrew and Uncle Aidan too, Liam reassured him, listing off the names of the Hawthorne bodyguards. Sure thing, kid. We'll all chip in to protect you, your baby brothers and your sister. Promise, Lewis added with a smile. Roger that, Adam said, and the two shared a fist bump with Liam and Owen. Rejoining the others, Nathaniel smiled as he saw Owen and Liam, carrying the two Owen's side tiredly. We have quite a lot to do to get the house ready for little Esme, he declared. Most of our toys have to go, Liam added solemnly. Okay, but hear me out, Nathaniel said, pausing for their attention. I know we all need to work together to protect little Esme, along with your little brothers, Landon and Mason. He stopped to gauge their reaction. The two nodded along, and Liam smiled, repeating the names under his breath and sharing a glance with Owen. Encouraged, Nathaniel continued, but they're still little, and we have a few more months before they start moving around. Remember, we're moving to Grandpa and Grandma's suite on the floor above ours, so we'll have plenty of space for the babies, you, Liam, and your mom. Even Big Mama could stay up there, so there's no need to panic just yet. We'll just make sure Esme, Landon, and Mason's room is baby-proof, okay? The twins nodded in agreement. I like the names you chose for the baby boys, Landon and Mason, Owen said. Me too, I like them, Liam chimed in. Good. Now let's go see if we can introduce the babies to their big brothers, Nathaniel teased. The two grinned at the idea. Andrew reached for Liam, helping Nathaniel carry him, while Nathaniel held onto Owen. Together they all headed inside the concierge unit. Upon entering, Nathaniel noticed the privacy shield had been repositioned to allow for more space. Jake stood guard by Landon and Mason's crib, not letting anyone get closer than 2 feet. Nathaniel chuckled at the sight. Yep, the triplets are going to be spoiled rotten, he thought. Congratulations, Dr. Hawthorne, Tom Hill immediately greeted, beaming with smiles. Thank you, Mr. Hill, Arya replied in a soft tone. Nathaniel directed his gaze at her on the bed and saw she was holding Esme, gently patting her on the back. The two were surrounded by Anna, Ms. Everly, Miss Jonas, Miss Bella, Noria, and Dawn. Some sat on the edge of the bed, while others stood around it. Arya looked his way and smiled, their eyes locking in a silent exchange. My boys, she mouthed. Nathaniel grinned. Congratulations, Arya, Alex called out in a deep, gentle voice, smiling at her. Way to go, kid, Ethan added, making Arya chuckle. Want to go give Mum a quick kiss before we meet the babies? Nathaniel whispered to Liam and Owen, both of whom nodded eagerly. Nathaniel set Owen down, and Andrew helped Liam down as well. The two boys hurried to the bed, where Anita and Noria assisted them in climbing up to sit beside their mother. Nathaniel watched as Arya kissed each of them in turn. We've seen Esme, Mom. She's cute. We'll protect her, don't worry, Owen declared. Yes, Mom, we will. We're going to make sure her room is baby-proof, Liam added, parroting his dad's earlier words. I know you'll protect her, my knights. I have no worries at all, Arya quipped, making the boys beam with pride. Anton saw Sean Cavalier gingerly approach the created opening of the makeshift delivery space, and he couldn't help tensing up. He knew the guys seemed to be on their side now, but Anton couldn't forget that this was the same man who had been open to the idea of murdering a child. That was all he needed to remember. Instinctively, he moved to position himself closer to Dr. Hawthorne's bed as the man came into view. Aidan must have noticed his protective stance because he immediately moved as well. Along with Charles, the men moving like a pack of dominoes falling into place, taking a protective formation around the space. Sean didn't seem to notice. His sole focus was on Dr. Hawthorne. But Jake did. He watched as Sean threw Dr. Hawthorne a sad smile. Congratulations. You are one amazing woman, he rasped. Thank you, Sean. How are you? She replied, smiling warmly at him. Sean shrugged. I'll live. Thanks to you and your team, he replied, tipping an imaginary hat before turning and striding away. Meanwhile, Nathaniel's gaze was fixed on the doctors who had gathered in a corner with Anita, speaking in hushed tones. Nathaniel didn't like that. He didn't like it at all. Arya had just undergone a procedure known for its inherent risks and unpredictability, with potential complications like severe bleeding, infections, and issues with anesthesia. The last thing Nathaniel wanted was for the doctors to spring an unexpected development on him. "Dr. Sterling," he called, catching the doctor's attention. "A word?" he added. He then turned and walked out. Dr. Sterling followed him, with Dr. Williams, Dr. Rowan, and Anita close behind. Nathaniel stopped at a considerable distance outside the privacy shield, his eyes filled with concern, waiting for the doctors to join him. "Is there something I should know? Your discussions seem to be missing a key member," Nathaniel remarked as the doctors came to stand in front of him. Anita stopped at his side. "Oh, we were just discussing Dr. Hawthorne's evaluation," Dr. Sterling explained with a reassuring smile. "Good. Let's discuss it together then." "Shoot," he quipped, causing Anita, Williams, and Rowan to chuckle. "Her vitals are stable, and her incision is clean with no signs of complications so far," Dr. Sterling reported. Nathaniel nodded, listening intently. "We've been keeping a close eye on her bleeding, and everything looks normal at this point. Her uterus is contracting as expected, which is key to controlling any postpartum hemorrhage. We're also making sure she's comfortable and managing her pain appropriately," Dr. Sterling continued. Dr. Rowan nodded in agreement and added, "We're also not seeing any blood clotting issues, which is a higher risk after a C-section. But so far, no concerning signs. We'll encourage her to move gently after feeding the babies to help with circulation." Nathaniel nodded again. "So she needs to start moving as soon as possible?" he asked. "Yes," Dr. Rowan confirmed. "It'll also help her overcome any post-surgery fears." "I'll keep an eye on her and monitor for signs of infection," Anita offered. "Thank you, Anita," Nathaniel replied with a smile. "And the triplets? Are they all right?" he asked. "All three are doing great," Dr. Sterling assured him with a confident smile. "Their initial checks are normal, and we're keeping a close eye on them too. Thank you. This makes me feel better. But I was wondering, could we move her back to the house where it's more comfortable?" The doctors exchanged glances. Then Dr. Rowan spoke up. "We don't see any immediate reason why not. We'll monitor her for the next few hours to ensure there are no delayed complications. If all goes well, we can arrange to move her back to the house. We'll help set everything up to ensure she's safe and comfortable." Anita smiled. "It's a good thing we have a live-in nurse to keep an eye on her." Nathaniel chuckled. "Thank you, Anita. I can't say that enough." Anita leaned happily. "You are very welcome," she said with an adorable gusto. Nathaniel understood she was happy her friend was doing great with her newborns. Meanwhile, Tom Hill received another call from Gray and let out a low growl of irritation before stepping outside into the cold. He answered the call saying, "Hello, Gray. I've been calling you all day," came Gray's voice from the other end, sounding primal. "Okay, what do you want?" Tom replied, his tone sharp. You did this. You set me up. If you think I'll just accept this like some obedient dog, you're sorely mistaken." "I won't go quietly, I swear it," Gray threatened. Tom remained silent, pressing record as Gray continued his tirade. Mid-threat, Gray seemed to notice the silence and barked, "Hello? Are you still there?" Tom walked away from the entrance of the medical unit to avoid being overheard. "Oh, I'm here and recording your threats. I find it rather idiotic to hold my phone to my ear while you rant about how you're going to get me when I least expect it, hurling insults and threatening to kill me, my family, and the Hawthornes," Tom said calmly. "What?" "I didn't say that," Gray bellowed. "Oh, I can replay the recording back to you if you'd like, Gray," Tom said, his voice calm and controlled. "You old bastard, I didn't threaten to kill the Hawthornes," Gray shouted into Tom's ear. "But you do plan to cause enough harm to severely distress Nathaniel and his pregnant wife, all for your own greed," Tom said, letting the silence stretch. "You planted evidence and spread lies to make the OPMC come after Dr. Hawthorne, a pregnant woman who has done nothing but uphold the integrity of her profession to save lives. You, Gray, planned to use your mole in the government to attack a Hawthorne, and now you dare to accuse me of setting you up?" Tom's voice grew louder with each word, his anger erupting like a volcano. Tom, listen, that was a mistake. I can make it go away," Gray started to say. It's too late. There's a saying that it's good to keep one's enemies close, but I'm old school. I think it's suicidal to place a lit candle on a headboard. Nathaniel Hawthorne has made enough money for you. I believe it's time you took your investment elsewhere, Tom declared. Tom, come on, I made a mistake, Gray bellowed in response. Call this number again, Gray, to hurl threats at me, and I'll forget my promise to Nate to keep things civil. This was business. If you have issues with our agreement, take us to court, Tom said and ended the call. Tom took a deep breath to calm his raging anger and turned to walk back inside. Upon entering, he saw Nathaniel standing with the doctors and Anita. He joined them. Is everything okay? He inquired. Yes, we were just discussing Aria's and the triplets' medical evaluations, Nathaniel replied, giving Tom a scrutinizing look and noting his usual subtle signs of anger. Everything okay with you? Nathaniel asked, as he thanked the doctors and started walking back inside with Tom. The older man let out a sigh and said, Just Gray pushing my buttons with his OPMC scam. OPMC scam? Rowan, who had overheard along with the other doctors, repeated from behind. Nathaniel and Tom turned to face them, and they all wore questioning expressions. Tom shared a look with Nathaniel, and a thought occurred to him. Rowan had been in the medical industry far longer than Dr. Hawthorne, and had previously clashed with the director of the Office of Professional Medical Conduct over his team's unconventional treatment methods. Tom recalled that Rowan had once been labeled the Frankenstein doctor by the State Medical Board, but had successfully defended himself against their claims. It was no secret that Dr. Rowan had a soft spot for his protégé, Dr. Hawthorne. Tom figured that in her absence, Rowan could be used to tackle the OPMC problem without Dr. Hawthorne even knowing. Well, I'm sure you've received the notification from the OPMC about some bogus inspection, Tom began. Yes, Rowan said, his posture visibly tensing. Yeah, well, it's a planned move to target Dr. Hawthorne, Tom explained, detailing Gray's scheme to use false claims against her to pressure her into selling her shares to Gray and Evergreen Memorial Hospital to Powell. What? Dr. Williams responded with a scowl. Rowan looked like he was about to explode. Give me the name of the person Gray is using at the OPMC, he demanded. Albert McConnell, Tom provided. I know McConnell. I'll handle this. Please, there's no need to involve Dr. Hawthorne in this nonsense, Rowan said. Thank you, Dr. Rowan, Tom said as he stepped back while the doctors walked away discussing the matter. When Tom looked at Nathaniel, he saw that Nathaniel was glowering at him. Tom raised an eyebrow at Nathaniel, giving him a questioning look. What did I do? He asked, though he had a pretty good idea. Tom understood that Nathaniel had an irrational fear of losing his wife, which was understandable given their past experiences. He knew Nathaniel's possessiveness stemmed from a deep emotional attachment and an intense passion for Dr. Hawthorne. This powerful connection stirred a protective streak in Nathaniel, one that made him wary of anyone getting too close to her. Nathaniel never hid the fact that he didn't want any man, whether family, friend or foe, becoming too friendly or touchy with his wife, which Tom also found understandable. However, Nathaniel's jealousy towards Dr. Rowan was completely unfounded. Anyone with even a shred of sense could see that Dr. Hawthorne only had eyes for him. But still, that didn't seem to matter. Tom remembered a conversation he'd had with Nathaniel when Dr. Hawthorne first came back. At the time, Nathaniel had believed that she didn't love him enough because deep down, he feared he wasn't enough for her. Yet, Tom thought the last few months should have made it clear to his godson that Dr. Hawthorne saw him as more than enough. She loved him completely and utterly. You know what you did, Tom. I don't need another man fighting my woman's battles, Nathaniel replied, his tone tense. Tom raised his hands in surrender, knowing there was no point in pretending ignorance. It would only upset Nathaniel more. My apologies, I was only looking out for Dr. Hawthorne. I figured any help to resolve the issue would be welcome, Tom said calmly. I know, I still don't like it, Nathaniel muttered, before turning and walking back behind the privacy shield. Meanwhile, after Liam and Owen finished with their mom, they climbed off the bed and rushed over to their Uncle Jake, who was standing guard beside their baby brothers. Uncle Jake hadn't let anyone get too close to the babies except for Big Mama, Aunt Anna, and Aunt Anita. But as soon as he saw the boys coming, he smiled and waved them over, lifting each of them up in one arm so they could see their baby brothers up close. Liam smiled at the sight, exchanging a look with Owen. The baby boys looked just like the pictures of them as babies. It was almost like they were little clones. Liam liked the idea of having a little clone. He figured he and Owen could each have one. Owen would probably choose Landon since, like Owen, he was the first of the triplets. Liam would pick Mason, the second of the triplets, like him. He started to imagine them pairing up for things like video games and competitions, but then a frown creased his forehead. What about baby Esme? She might feel left out. Maybe she could team up with their mom or Aunt Anita. He considered it for a moment, then dismissed the idea. Aunt Anita was terrible at math, and Esme would end up losing all the time, which might make her cry. It was better if Esme teamed up with their mom, or even their dad. It was his fault they had a baby sister after all. Now they'd have to protect her all the time. Liam shot a glare at his dad. Owen, meanwhile, studied the baby boys and thought about what Uncle Lewis had said. The boys were small. That made sense since they were babies, but Owen still found it strange that it hadn't occurred to him before. Even though they were slightly bigger than baby Esme, they were just as delicate. He reached out to touch the second twin, identified by the tag on his tiny wrist. The baby wiggled, his face stretching into a smile as he grabbed Owen's finger and tried to pull it into his mouth. "Oh no, germs!" Owen exclaimed, quickly pulling his finger back. The baby, displeased, began to fidget, his little face gearing up for a cry. Owen glanced helplessly at Jake. "Mason, you can't just put anything you grab into your mouth," Liam scolded. Then, realizing that Mason had done exactly what they'd worried Esme might do, his brow furrowed in concern. Uncle Lewis was right. They had their work cut out for them. "Don't cry, little one. Your big brother's just looking out for you," Aunt Anita cooed, gently rocking Mason in her arms. "Can I hold him too?" Owen asked, reaching for Landon's hand. Unlike Mason, Landon quietly held Owen's fingers and cooed softly. Owen smiled warmly at his little brother. "Come sit down so I can put him in your arms," Aunt Anita said. "I want to hold the baby too," Liam protested. "Don't worry, you'll get your turn. We'll go one at a time and be gentle," Aunt Anita reassured him. Both boys nodded eagerly. Arya, watching from the bed, smiled. Little Esme shifted on her chest, and Arya gently ran her fingers through her soft curls, gazing at her beautiful daughter with a contented smile. She couldn't quite express how grateful she was to have her baby safe and sound. She knew she'd have to take it easy for the next few weeks, but it was a small price to pay. For some reason, her thoughts drifted to Jake, and the baby Giselle was fighting to keep alive. As she watched Jake help Anita place Landon and Mason into the boys' arms, she quietly wished for him to find his own happy ending, just as she and Nathan had. She thought he was a good man and deserved the very best. "Oh, Dr. Hawthorne," Dr. Sterling called as she came to stand by Arya's bedside. Arya turned her gaze toward the doctor and smiled warmly. "Mr. Hawthorne wants you and the babies to be moved home, and we thought it would be a good opportunity for you to walk a bit, to improve blood circulation," she added. Arya nodded, understanding the need for the request, though the practicality was another thing. When she had the twins, it was a natural birth, and once the babies arrived, it wasn't hard to get back on her feet, especially with her aunt's help. Now, however, with the cesarean section, she couldn't shake the irrational fear of moving and potentially causing her incision to tear. As a surgeon, she knew this fear was utterly irrational. Dr. Rowan was excellent, and she trusted that he and the other doctors had done a great job. Yet, as a human, she was still plagued by fears, just like everyone else. Her aunt, Miss Everly, approached to lift little Esme from her chest. At that moment, Nathaniel stepped forward to offer her his hand. When she paused and looked up at him, he smiled gently, but Arya could sense a hint of fear hidden behind his intense gaze. Nathaniel had a way of making her want to be strong, but right then, she couldn't shake her fear. Sensing her apprehension, he took both of her hands and gave her a reassuring tug. She let out a sigh and managed to sit up, feeling the numbness below her stomach where the incision was. Although she felt no pain, she felt heavy and shaky. Nathaniel watched her struggle, fighting the urge to interfere. He wanted to scoop her up, hold her tight, and tell her she could take her time, but he understood this was an important part of her healing process. He gently helped her to her feet, his heart constricting as she struggled with each step. "How many steps does she need to take?" Nathaniel asked, his agitation palpable, which made Arya look up at him and smile. "We can aim for 3 minutes now, but for subsequent walks, 5 to 10 minutes," Dr. Rowan interjected, earning a smile from Arya. "You don't have to overdo it, Dr. Hawthorne. Just take baby steps." She nodded in acknowledgement. "I can do this," she said to Nathaniel, holding his gaze. She remembered a few hours ago when she had said the same thing to him, and he had responded that he couldn't bear to watch her anymore. She was pretty sure the same was happening right then. She smiled at him. "All right, let's see if you can walk to the vehicle that will take us home," Nathaniel said with a smile. Arya nodded, determined. Anna and Noria stood by her side, while Ms. Everly, Miss Bella, and Dawn helped with the babies. Once they headed out of the privacy screens, Owen ran to join them so he could keep an eye on the newborns. Liam, on the other hand, was momentarily indecisive about whether to follow Owen to look out for his baby brothers and sister or stay to take care of his mom. He decided to stay with his mom. He hurried back to stand by her side, reaching for her hand. "My knight," Arya mouthed to him, and he giggled, his face lighting up with joy. Jake joined Nathaniel to usher Dr. Hawthorne outside, smiling as the Hawthorne guards erupted in applause and cheers as she made her way out. "Woohoo! There she is! Congratulations, Dr. Hawthorne!" They cheered as she took careful steps, with Nathaniel watching her intently. She waved with a smile, her face glowing with happiness. As she neared the vehicle, she paused for a moment. Nathaniel quickly scooped her up, and Arya let out a shaky breath, holding on to him. Jake hurried ahead to open the car door for Nathaniel to help Dr. Hawthorne inside. Once Nathaniel, Arya, Liam, Anna, Noria, Alex, and Ethan were settled in the car, Jake stepped back with Andrew. As the car pulled away, Jake spotted Sean Cavalier in a clearing in the woods nearby, watching them. Jake couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for him. Sean's eyes were dark and haunted, and Jake wondered about the demons he might be battling with. He felt a twinge of guilt for not telling Sean about Julia, but pushed the thought away as it surfaced. "Mr. McLeod?" a voice called to Andrew, drawing both him and Jake's attention. They looked over to see Dr. Rowan approaching. Andrew and Jake exchanged puzzled glances, wondering what the doctor wanted. Rowan hurried to join them. "Hi. I don't know if Mr. Hill informed you, but I'll be going to Evergreen Memorial in the morning for a scheduled inspection by the State Board for Professional Medical Conduct," Rowan said, sounding firm and determined. Andrew and Jake were familiar with the OPMC's mission to Evergreen Memorial, but were a bit confused about Rowan's involvement. "Okay, I'll make the necessary arrangements to have you driven there," Andrew said. "Good, thanks. I'll also need one of your best men to stand guard," Rowan replied. "Stand guard?" Jake asked, bemused. "Yes, just in case of unexpected complications," Rowan said, then added, "Thank you, gentlemen," before striding away. "Do you have any idea what that's about?" Jake asked, his confusion still evident. Andrew shrugged. "But he did mention Mr. Hill," he replied. The two men shared a knowing look. "Boss isn't going to like whatever this is," Jake quipped with a smirk. "If I were in his shoes, this would be amusing," Andrew said as they began walking towards Andrew's car, which would take them to the Hawthorne's wing of the estate. "Trust me, you would not," Jake replied, chuckling. "Really? You think you know better than me now that you're a married man for all of one day," Andrew teased. "I'm telling you, it's fantastic on this side of life," Jake said, making Andrew chuckle. "I hope you keep that energy when you finally meet your grandfather-in-law." "I hear he's a major douchebag," Andrew joked. "Whoa, language, sir. I'm the only one qualified to call him names," Jake retorted in mock seriousness, prompting Andrew to playfully smack him on the back of the shoulder. Jake mock glared at him. "How's the wife today?" "I haven't seen her around," Andrew asked as he slid behind the wheel. "Let's pick her up on the way. She was still sleeping this morning when Charles alerted me about Dr. Hawthorne going into labor. You'd think I was the father. I ran out of there like the building was on fire." "I think I may have forgotten I even have a wife," he replied in a hushed tone. "That woman's got us all wrapped around her fingers. It's witchcraft, I tell you." Andrew's shoulders shook with laughter. They stopped at the Hawthorne Guards apartment complex to pick Christine up. Jake hurried up to his apartment and found her already dressed. Miss Jonas had sent over food and supplies, along with an array of confectionaries. Christine was eating a chicken pot pie when he walked in, and his stomach rumbled at the mix of delicious smells wafting through the apartment. Christine looked up from her plate of pie as if she'd been caught indulging in a guilty pleasure. Jake placed his hands on his hips and said, "I call foul. Even I don't get this kind of treatment on the norm." Christine covered her mouth, giggling. "I'm a special guest," she quipped. "Not anymore, Mrs. Darfield. You're one of us now, and I demand my share of whatever you've got over there," he said, feigning outrage. Jake called Andrew to come upstairs, and the two joined Christine in finishing off her food, before the three of them headed to the Hawthorns. Andrew wasn't surprised to see the back porch and foyer of the house filled with staff. One would think it was an annual Thanksgiving celebration. Spotting Aidan, he left Christine and Jake behind and moved closer to him. "Hey, I've got an assignment for you," Andrew began. "Shoot," Aidan replied. Meanwhile, a few minutes earlier when they reached the house, Nathaniel exited the Jeep and carefully helped Aria out, mindful of her incisions, before lifting her into his arms. Liam ran ahead, up to the front porch, along with the guards, eager to help open the front door, making everyone laugh. He grinned proudly when his dad thanked him along with the guards. Upstairs, Aria noticed that Nathaniel wasn't taking her to their apartment. Instead, he carried her towards the secret elevator that led to the topmost floor. "Has the place been prepared already, Daddy?" Liam asked curiously, matching his dad's strides. "Yes, son. Grandpa Hill and Miss Jonas took care of it," Nathaniel replied with a smile. "Cool," Liam said, his excitement growing as he began to skip. When they reached the top floor, Liam noticed how different it looked compared to the last time they were there for the party for his Aunt Anita, Aunt Anna, Uncle Andrew, and Uncle Alex. It even smelled different, and Liam liked it. The pool had been covered with see-through patterned glass, allowing him to see the pool clearly, although it now resembled a regular floor. The atrium roof displayed the drifting snowflakes outside against the cool, starless sky. The expansive space felt warm, and Liam saw Grandpa Hill through the sliding doors, pacing with a smile while carrying one of the babies. Big Mama was there too, along with Grandma Bella and the rest of the family. When Liam saw Owen pacing back and forth with Big Mama, he glanced up to check if his mom and dad still needed him. Seeing that they didn't, he hurried ahead. Nathaniel trailed after Liam's running form and into the living room. He appreciated having friends and family gathered around them during this delicate time, but he wished he could have a quiet moment alone with his wife and children. Aria nuzzled her nose against his chest, drawing his attention. He smiled down at her, realizing she wanted him to scratch her nose. He chuckled softly. "Welcome, welcome," Miss Everly greeted them warmly. "Thanks, Auntie," Aria responded. "Let me show you to your room," Tom said as he strode ahead toward what Nathaniel remembered as his parents' private suite. A smile stretched across Nathaniel's lips at the memory. The suite was much larger than the room on the floor below, with 6 rooms along the short hallway, 3 on each side, leading to the main suite. Though these rooms weren't as spacious as the main suite, they were still expansive, each featuring a walk-in closet. The 6 rooms had adjoining doors to one another, but none connected directly to the main suite. This wing was only one of 3 on the top floor. As Nathaniel entered the elegant room, he immediately noticed that everything had been changed. The furnishings, the furniture, the bedding, everything was new. The air smelled fresh and inviting. His eyes landed on a bouquet of roses in a shell-like glass vase on the coffee table. Nathaniel carried Aria over to the bed, but before he could place her on the freshly made sheets, she stopped him, not meeting his eyes as she whispered, "I think I need to go and change." Her voice trailed off. Nathaniel, though not a woman and having never gone through childbirth, understood enough to know the doctors had encouraged Aria to walk for better blood circulation. He assumed that, given the circumstances, an outflow of blood more than usual was likely normal, though he hoped it was within healthy limits. He murmured, his voice low, a rumble deep in his chest. Changing course, he carried her into the bathroom, gently placing her in the jacuzzi to avoid making a mess. Stepping back, he locked eyes with her and said, "Tell me how to help." Arya looked away, a shy smile tugging at her lips. "Can you just get Anita?" she asked. "No. Tell me how to help," he insisted. Arya hesitated, but then met his gaze, seeing the gleam of affection and concern shining back at her. "I'm bleeding, baby," she warned. "I'm not afraid of blood, babe," he replied. "I'm just not really comfortable with you seeing me like this, bleeding from, you know," she mumbled shyly. "I don't think you quite understand how little I care about that right now," he said softly. "All I care about is that you're okay and healthy." His words, though spoken lightly, made Arya's eyes well up with tears. Nathaniel reached up to frame her face with his hands, his gaze piercing. "Eventually, everyone will leave and it'll just be me and you. Teach me how to care for you, my love. I want it to be my responsibility, my way of contributing after this amazing thing you've done for me today, having my babies and continuing my legacy," he rasped. Tears spilled down Arya's cheeks as she smiled at him, her lips trembling. "Okay, don't say I didn't warn you," she quipped. He grinned and repeated, "Tell me how to help." Arya nodded in submission. The following day, Aidan woke up early and headed straight to the concierge medical unit to pick up Dr. Rowan. They had all stayed up pretty late the night before, lounging around, chatting and drinking. And Aidan had kissed Noria. Curse the damn alcohol, he thought in exasperation. It was a good thing he had come to his senses quickly. Noria hadn't been too happy when he pulled away, but he was determined to stick to his plan. He wanted her to live her life a little, without feeling obligated to accept him out of sheer gratitude. It wouldn't be right. When he arrived at the concierge, he found the guards Andrew had personally selected already waiting for him. Andrew was there too. Aidan couldn't quite figure out how the older man did it. Maybe he was the cyborg, not Jake. Or perhaps the Hawthornes had created the two men just to demonstrate an impossible level of excellence no one else could ever reach. After all, he was sure he had seen Andrew and Jake drinking with them the previous night. How are their women even coping with this madness? Aidan thought, feeling a surge of irritation. By around 6 a.m., they had already arrived at the hospital. Around 6:30 a.m., a man who looked like he had slept in his clothes and hadn't bathed for 2 days appeared. Aidan thought the man seemed familiar, but he couldn't quite place him. The man hurried to a corner of the hospital reception, and Aidan watched as he pulled out a small recorder, the kind journalists use. Aidan's eyes widened as realization struck. The man was Connor Whitman, a legendary freelance reporter known for exposing malpractices and corrupt medical officials. He'd been in the game for decades, and Aidan guessed he was probably in his early 50s by now. He remembered why the man seemed so familiar. Whitman had gained notoriety when he showed up to receive an award looking practically homeless, using his acceptance speech to expose a corrupt top government official. Aidan wasn't sure how to feel about this new development. Was Connor Whitman on their side? Because if he wasn't, this situation could go very badly. Aidan wondered if this was why Andrew had insisted Dr. Rowan needed security. He took out his phone, ready to report back to Andrew, but paused when he saw Dr. Rowan approach the man. The two shook hands, and Aidan could tell from their body language that they were well acquainted. So, Connor Whitman is on our side? Aidan mused quietly. By 7 a.m., the hospital began to stir with activity as patients started streaming in, and the reception area quickly became crowded. Aidan stepped outside, leaving the other men stationed in the hallway. Moments later, he saw the OPMC vehicle pull up. A van carrying 4 officials, all wearing badges and looking serious. He turned and walked back inside to alert Rowan. By the time the officials entered the reception, Dr. Rowan was there to greet them. "Good morning, Dr. Rowan," one of the officials said. Aidan noted that she looked like one of those mean school matrons who had nothing going on in their personal lives and took it out on others. She wore one of those hideous Christmas cardigans that people gift you just to make you miserable. And her shoes... Dear heavens, woman, it's the 21st century, get a wardrobe upgrade, Aidan thought, keeping his expression neutral as he fought to maintain his composure, thinking he was definitely going straight to hell for his thoughts. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but Dr. Hawthorne gave birth yesterday. 3 babies, can you believe it? 2 beautiful boys and an adorable girl. Dr. Rowan said with a smile and a straight face. But I have Connor Whitman here with me, just to make sure we keep this witch hunt professional. Aidan had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. The official stared in horror as Connor Whitman stepped up beside Rowan, offering a polite nod and a broad grin. Aidan noticed the subtle shift in the room. The officials exchanged uneasy glances, one nervously wiping a bead of sweat from her brow. Their stiff postures and darting eyes gave them away, the tension almost tangible. It was as if the very air had thickened with anxiety, and Aidan couldn't help but smirk at their discomfort. I do live streams now, Connor Whitman announced cheerfully. You've gotta love technology, he added with enthusiasm. The officials exchanged nervous glances, and their leader swallowed hard. Anyone unfamiliar with the long history between Rowan Whitman and the State Board for Professional Medical Conduct wouldn't realize that this move was a clear challenge and a declaration of war. But Aidan was certain the officials got the message loud and clear. Excuse me while I make a call, the lead official said hastily before hurrying off. Aidan watched as the head representative of the State Board for Professional Medical Conduct hurried to a corner to make a call. Rowan and Connor Whitman attempted to engage the other officials in light chit-chat, but the response was hesitant and reluctant, judging by their shifty, sidelong glances at one another and their body language. Aidan could tell they were uncomfortable conversing with Connor Whitman standing there, listening. The man truly embodied the saying, "The pen is mightier than the sword." Meanwhile, the official who had stepped aside to make the call seemed to be having trouble connecting with whoever she was trying to reach. Frustration, confusion, and irritation were etched across her face, the kind of look that clearly showed things weren't going as planned. She fidgeted, glaring at her phone as if it had suddenly become her worst enemy. All the while, she kept tucking an imaginary loose strand of hair behind her ear, despite her hair being tightly pulled back into a neat knot, without a single stray hair in sight. Aidan found the unfolding cat and mouse game highly entertaining. Andrew had mentioned to him that the idea of Rowan coming to Evergreen Memorial had originated from Tom Hill. Armed with that knowledge, and now witnessing Rowan's moves on the chessboard, Aidan could easily conclude that these poor OPMC officials were in over their heads. "What do you think could be taking her so long?" Connor Whitman inquired, directing the question to the nearest official. The woman's eyes widened in horror as she stepped back. Then she stammered out some gibberish while Connor Whitman watched her intently with fascination, as if she was something utterly alien. Aidan briefly wondered if it would be inappropriate to grab some popcorn, because this scene was far more entertaining than the Spanish dramas Noria liked to watch. He thought the woman looked like one of those scheming characters, working with the villain to frame the heroine for something shady. He silently amused himself, which was quite ironic. Speaking of Noria, he reminded himself to enroll her in online classes to prepare for her general educational development test. He figured her performance would determine their next steps from there. The OPMC official returned, pulling Aidan from his thoughts. He noticed her dragging her feet and the uncertainty in her expression. He could tell the moment she made a decision, her frown vanished and her jaw set with resolve. "I'm sorry to keep you all waiting. If it's all right, we'd like to proceed with our routine check. Dr. Rowan, I believe you're quite familiar with the procedure, so if you would, please lead the way," the woman said. Aidan's lips tugged into a subtle smirk. He actually felt a small sense of pride in the woman's courage and thought he might root for her, albeit only about 2% of the time. "Of course, please follow me," Dr. Rowan replied with a broad smile, one that Aidan thought looked very much like a fox smiling at a deer. He led the officials through the pristine hallways, the soft glow of fluorescent lights reflecting off the polished floors. Aidan followed a few steps behind, keenly observing but keeping his distance. The air was thick with anticipation, each footstep sounding louder than it should, as though the hospital itself was holding its breath. The group reached the surgical unit, where one of the officials from the Office of Professional Medical Conduct, a tall man with glasses perched precariously on his nose, immediately flipped open a notepad. His pen scratched against the paper, the sound unnervingly loud in the silence. The atmosphere was tense, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Aidan's eyes shifted to Connor Whitman, who had pulled out his phone and started a live stream, casually remarking on the routine check at Evergreen Memorial that he had been privileged to witness. The officials did their best to ignore him, but Whitman's presence exerted pressure on the room, an unspoken force that kept everyone on edge. "Shall we proceed to the ICU?" Dr. Rowan asked, his tone light, though Aidan sensed an undercurrent of amusement. Rowan appeared calm, but Aidan knew better. There was a calculated mind behind that easy demeanor. The inspection moved into the ICU, where one of the younger officials, a woman who had remained quiet up until now, began to ask more pointed questions. She focused on patient care and staff credentials, but Rowan answered each one with the poise and confidence of a seasoned professional. His responses seemed to ease the group, with some of the officials even relaxing, lulled into believing this would be just another routine audit. But then, the woman Aidan had mentally dubbed the ugly sweater lady stepped forward, her jaw set with determination. "Dr. Rowan," she began, her voice steady but edged with a hard tone. "We've received reports of a surgery involving an illegal organ transplant. We'll need to review those records immediately," she said. "Aha! Here we are," Aidan thought to himself, as Connor Whitman stepped closer, carefully watching every display of emotion on the woman's face. For a brief moment, something flickered in Rowan's eyes, an emotion too quick to identify, but it vanished just as quickly, replaced by his usual affable smile. "Of course," Rowan replied smoothly. "All our records are meticulously maintained. You'll find that every procedure followed proper protocols." He gestured to the head of the legal department, who swiftly retrieved the necessary files. The officials spread out, some poring over the records while others continued their inspection. Aidan stayed close to Whitman, his mind now racing with anticipation. As the officials scrutinized every document, searching for any hint of a loophole or misstep, Rowan remained composed. Hours passed and the tension mounted, but nothing surfaced. Every document was in order, every procedure accounted for. The officials, growing frustrated, double-checked everything, yet found nothing. Eventually, the lead official, her face a mask of begrudging acceptance, approached Rowan with a thick file under her arm. Her earlier confidence had waned. In the background, Connor Whitman's deep voice resonated, narrating as if he were making a documentary, ensuring it was noted that the officials, after thorough review, had found nothing. "We'll take these records with us for further review," the woman said, her voice lacking its previous edge. "You can expect a follow-up meeting." "Ah," Rowan gave a small nod, his smile unbroken. "Of course. We are always happy to cooperate with the OPMC," he replied. The officials gathered their belongings and headed out, but Connor Whitman followed them, bombarding them with pointed questions that Aidan found quite needling. Whitman's line of questioning was relentless, implying the OPMC had come looking for a scandal but left empty-handed. Aidan found it ridiculous that he expected the officials to just admit to it. Whitman focused particularly on one official, almost taunting her. Aidan furrowed his brows, thinking this had to be one of the most brazen tactics he had ever witnessed. His gaze sharpened as the lead official turned on Whitman and snapped, "I will have you know our boss, Albert McConnell, received a tip about an illegal transplantation. That's why we came here. We aren't on some witch hunt. It was a simple protocol inspection, which we are paid to conduct to protect the public, Mr. Whitman. Not everyone is corrupt and shady, and I won't let you paint us all in that light." The silence that followed was almost comical. Aidan felt like he could applaud and give Whitman a standing ovation if this were an orchestrated performance. The woman had cracked under pressure, practically offering up her boss, Albert McConnell, on a live stream as the source of the investigation. "I take it Albert McConnell can give us more insight into this supposed source?" Whitman asked, his deep voice suddenly soft, almost predatory. Aidan couldn't help but think the man was some kind of mentalist. Of course," the woman stuttered, her face flushing a deep shade of red. It was clear in her eyes that she realized she had just made a massive blunder. She quickly turned away, and the officials hurried to their van. Aidan could see them already arguing as they boarded. Connor Whitman came to stand beside Dr. Rowan. "That went well," Rowan said, his tone light, tinged with amusement. "Well, thank you for giving me my next assignment, old friend," Whitman replied, a satisfied smirk crossing his face. Do you perhaps take interns?" Aidan asked, his voice hesitant, drawing the puzzled gazes of both men. They frowned slightly, clearly caught off guard. I thought maybe you could give me some pointers on how you pulled that off," he added, carefully enunciating each word. Rowan burst out laughing, unable to contain himself. Now that Gray's watchdog had been kicked to the curb, Aidan stepped aside to call Andrew and report the situation. Andrew roared with laughter when he heard that Rowan had invited Connor Whitman. "He expertly turned the tide. I've never seen anything like it," Aidan remarked, making Andrew laugh even harder. "Boss will be glad to hear this. I'll tell him to check out Connor Whitman's channel. That should sum it all up." "So, are you guys on your way back?" Andrew inquired. "Let me check with Rowan," and Aidan began, but his words faded as his attention was drawn to a red light flashing on the wall panel that listed the room and ward numbers. The blinking light was for the ward on the top floor, reserved for high-profile individuals. It was the last room in the row, and Aidan immediately recognized it as Giselle's. He had been present, along with the top Hawthorne guards, when the security team assigned to the hospital was given a thorough tour of the hospital's security and systems. "Dr. Rowan," Aidan heard the nurse behind the reception desk call out, alarm evident in her voice and expression. He watched as Rowan hurried over and the nurse gestured frantically at the panel. Rowan took one look and shouted, "Page Dr. Yen now!" before sprinting toward the elevator. "What's going on, Aidan?" Andrew's voice filtered through the phone, reminding Aidan that he was still on the call. "I think something's happening with Giselle," Aidan replied tersely. "Shit," Andrew muttered. "Confirm and get back to me. I'll inform Dr. Hawthorne and Jake," he said before ending the call. Aidan began jogging toward the elevator, his heart pounding. Back at the Hawthorne residence, the previous night had been anything but quiet. Aria didn't make it to bed until well after midnight, with Nathaniel reassuring her that the babies were in good hands as he gently led her to rest. Nathaniel then, along with the twins, Dr. Sterling, Miss Everly, Miss Bella, Tom Hill, Anita, Noria, Anna, Alex, and Ethan, had worked together to settle the triplets into separate cots in their own rooms. The adjoining doors between the rooms, as well as those connecting to Liam and Owen's rooms, were left open. The twins shared a room with their big mama, and Anita, Anna, and Noria stayed in the spare suites. The night passed peacefully. Until 2 a.m. Mason was the first to stir, fidgeting restlessly, and, although he was in a different room, Landon soon followed suit. The baby monitor picked up the sounds, rousing the adults one after the other. Nathaniel was the first to wake up. He had settled beside Aria sometime during the night, leaving a bit of space between them to avoid accidentally hurting her. However, he now found himself pressed against her back, with her hand gently holding his against her chest. A soft chuckle rumbled through his chest. He pressed a kiss on the back of her shoulder before carefully detaching from her to switch off the baby monitor. He then hurried into Landon's room. "Hey there, little guy. Dad's here, no need to worry," Nathaniel cooed softly as he carefully lifted Landon from the cot, supporting his head just as Anita had shown him. But then he heard Mason's cries coming from the adjoining room. With a chuckle, he moved through the door to pick him up as well. "All right, hush now, boys. You've got to help me out here," Nathaniel murmured playfully. "If not, we're in for a long night." Just then he caught a faint whimper from Esme's room. Striding in, he found her barely fussing, her cry soft and almost inaudible. "Oh, my sweet princess, Daddy's here," he cooed, somehow managing to cradle all 3 babies against his chest as he swayed gently. "I'm not sure if you're hungry or need a diaper change, but let's quiet down so Daddy can figure it out. We can't wake Mummy yet. She's recovering and needs her sleep, okay?" The triplets blinked up at him, their tiny eyes wide with curiosity, and Nathaniel's heart swelled with love. "Looks like we are good," he whispered with a smile. Tom appeared in the doorway, grinning as he stepped inside. "Need a hand? Looks like you've got your hands full over here," he joked as he approached him. Nathaniel chuckled, his gaze still fixed on the babies, afraid that even a second of inattention might bring on more tears. Definitely, Nathaniel replied. I need to figure out what's bugging them. They can't be hungry already, can they? Anita's laughter echoed from the doorway, drawing their attention. I hate to break it to you, she teased, but boys eat like there's no tomorrow. Ah, here comes the expert. Big applause for Aunt Anita, Nathaniel quietly said to the babies. The three continued to blink up at him, their focus unwavering. Honestly, I'm afraid to break the spell, he whispered. It's your voice, Nate. They probably got used to hearing it in the womb, and it's soothing for them. Anita explained with a knowing smile. The thought made Nathaniel grin. All right, let's give Dad a little break and check these diapers, Anita said, gently taking Landon from his arms. The moment she did, Landon started to cry. Oh, I'm so sorry, sweetie. Don't worry, Daddy's right here, Anita cooed, trying to calm him. Tom stepped in to take Mason, but he, too, began to cry the second he left Nathaniel's hold. Esme, however, stayed quiet, resting her head against Nathaniel's chest. Nathaniel chuckled softly. Tom and Anita exchanged amused glances, realizing that as long as Nathaniel spoke, the babies stayed calm, but as soon as he stopped, they threatened to start crying again. Nate, you should keep talking. It's calming them down, Tom said, smiling. Oh, okay, Daddy to the rescue, he said with a quiet gusto and started telling a story, his voice steady and soothing. Soon Noria, Anna, Miss Everly, and Miss Bella drifted in. While Nathaniel continued to talk, Anita skillfully changed the baby's diapers. She then fetched the breast milk that had been stored earlier. Nathaniel sat down to feed Esme, Tom took Mason, and Anita handled Landon. By the time Nathaniel finally made it back to bed, he was thoroughly worn out. When Aria woke the next morning, she felt fully rested. Dr. Sterling and Dr. Williams came by to check on her around 8 a.m., and she was surprised Nathaniel had slept through the visit. After the doctors left, she gently placed her hand on his forehead, concerned he might be coming down with something. But Anita soon came in and shared the story of their midnight adventure, making Aria smile warmly down at his sleeping form, gently running her fingers through his hair. Later, as Aria sat in bed eating breakfast, Nathaniel still fast asleep beside her, Andrew came in. Dr. Hawthorne, there's something you should know, Andrew said as he came to stand at the foot of the bed. What's wrong? Aria asked, her voice filled with concern. Nathaniel stirred at the sound of her voice, sitting up groggily. You okay, babe? He asked before turning to Andrew. What's going on? It's Giselle, boss, Andrew replied gravely. Oh dear, Aria murmured apprehensively. Andrew quickly relayed to Dr. Hawthorne what Aidan had said about Giselle, deliberately omitting the part about Rowan inviting Connor Whitman to the State Board for professional medical conduct inspection. He wasn't sure if Nathaniel had already informed Dr. Hawthorne about the underground witch hunt. Let's wait for Aidan to get back to us. And just to be on the safe side, I need to make a phone call. Have you informed Jake? Nathaniel asked. No, I want to be sure of what is happening before I go to him, Andrew replied. Nathaniel nodded in acknowledgement. Aria mentally calculated the chances of Jake's baby surviving if it had to be evacuated from Giselle's body at this point, and her deduction wasn't good. I suppose I can't go, Aria began. No, both Nathaniel and Andrew interjected, furrowing their brows at her. She raised her right hand in surrender and rolled her eyes. Please let Aidan know to inform Rowan that I would very much like to observe whatever is going on, Aria said. I thought of that too. I'll let Aidan know, Andrew replied. Thank you, Andrew, Aria responded. From the corner of her eye, she caught Nathaniel sitting up, exposing his naked chest as the covers slid down to reveal his well-chiseled abs. Then, to her alarm, he placed his hand over his chest before moving it to knead his shoulder. Nathan! Aria called, momentarily forgetting about Giselle as her heart surged with fear. He turned to face her, their eyes locking. What's wrong? She probed, the tension in her voice clear. Wrong, he repeated, shaking his head in bemusement. You placed your hand on your chest, then kneaded your shoulder, my love, Aria said, her concern evident. Understanding dawned on Nathaniel, and he reached out to hold her hand. I'm fine, babe. I just felt a slight ache. Probably from holding 3 babies with the utmost care for a long time, he explained jokingly, though he wasn't entirely sure why he had made the movement. He had felt sore, which led him to unconsciously do it. Yeah, Aria responded, reaching for her phone on the bedside table. Babe, what are you doing? Nathaniel asked, though he could almost guess. "I'm texting Dr. Williams." "You're getting a checkup," she announced, her tone leaving no room for argument. Nathaniel shared a look with Andrew, who smiled knowingly. Nathaniel picked up his phone and dialed the head of his biomedical team. "Remember that project we discussed?" he asked the moment the man finished with the pleasantries. "Yes, boss," the man replied. "Do you think we can test it in real time?" Nathaniel pressed. Arya shot him a puzzled glance, curious about what he was planning. A few minutes later, Andrew parked in front of the Hawthorne guard's apartment complex and sent Jake a message, asking him to meet him outside. Jake, who had just exited the bathroom, towel drying his hair, heard his phone chime with a message. He took long strides across the room to pick it up from the bedside table. "Babe, coffee?" Christine called from the kitchenette. "Yes, please," Jake replied. Opening the message and seeing it was from Andrew, the words seemed to leap off the screen and he felt a pang in his soul. It was unlike Andrew to text him to meet somewhere without giving more information. He wouldn't have texted if he was right outside, and the fact that he chose to text instead of call meant something was happening, something he didn't want Christine to know about. His mind immediately went to Giselle, and his heart clenched at the thought. Perhaps she was dead, taking his child with her, or maybe her body could no longer sustain the baby, and it was time to operate. A profound fear surged through him. This couldn't have happened at a worse time. Dr. Hawthorne had just given birth. Dr. Sterling was at the estate, and he remembered that Rowan was supposed to host the state board for professional medical conduct officials for an inspection at Evergreen Memorial today. Hope surfaced as he thought about Rowan. He was a good surgeon and might be able to help, but the apprehension remained that Dr. Hawthorne wouldn't be there. Dropping the phone, Jake hurried to the closet to pick out clothes, his mind racing as he wondered whether he should tell Christine what was happening. "I don't even know yet," he thought to himself. He figured he'd have to come up with an explanation for why he needed to leave, especially since they'd planned to visit the home they'd bought and had hoped Christine's grandfather would visit. Christine had mentioned they needed to hire workers to make it appear the household had been in existence for a while. Jake thought they could just borrow a few of the Hawthorne workers, since the house was only 2 blocks away from the Hawthorne estate. It was too short a time to hire random people, and he knew security and loyalty would be crucial considerations. "You're getting dressed already?" Christine's voice interrupted his thoughts, pulling him out of his head. "I think something came up and I need to see Andrew," he said, lying by omission. "Jake, we need time off for ourselves," Christine grumbled, clearly displeased. "I'm sorry, babe. If it's something that can be done without me, it'll only take a minute," Jake reassured her. "And if not? Come on, Jake, we're supposed to go check out the house," she added. Jake finished dressing, picked up his phone and pocketed it before going to stand in front of her. He framed her face with his hands, gently making her look up at him. "I'll find someone to go with you if I can't come, okay, honey?" he urged before lowering his head to press a kiss to her lips. Christine let out a sigh. "You really need to take time off," she added. "And I will," he promised as he drew back and left. Christine watched him go, her eyes landing on the untouched coffee she had made for him as the door clicked shut. Jake slid into the front passenger seat of Andrew's Jeep, casting a glance at Charles and Lewis in the back. He exhaled deeply, sinking into the seat, already sensing that something awful had occurred. "I know she's gone, but please, tell me the baby made it," Jake muttered, his voice heavy with resignation. His fists tightened, heart pounding, and jaw clenched, as he prepared himself for the bad news he feared was inevitable. Earlier on, Aidan sprinted down the hallway towards the elevator at the end, reaching it just as Dr. Rowan stepped inside with another nurse. Rowan kept glancing at the floor numbers as they ascended, tapping his foot impatiently as if willing the elevator to catapult them to the topmost floor. Aidan could tell time was of the essence. When the elevator doors finally opened, Rowan dashed down the corridor past the reception. Aidan didn't miss the relieved sigh from the nurse at the desk as the doctor sprinted by. "Get Dr. Yen here, and prepare for surgery," Rowan shouted as he continued to run. "I've already paged her," the nurse called back. Aidan hurried after Rowan and the nurse. As they reached the door, Rowan pushed it open, and they were immediately greeted by the alarming sounds of machines beeping frantically as if warning of imminent danger. Rowan let out a string of expletives that would have impressed Aidan with their creativity if this weren't such a dire situation. Aidan stood back as Rowan barked orders at the nurse while quickly scanning the data on the monitors. "The baby is losing oxygen. We need to get him out," Rowan said as he rushed to detach Giselle's bed, taking advantage of the wheels to push it forward. "Help?" he called to Aidan. Aidan snapped into action. "Lead the way," he responded. Rowan hurried to the foyer, pushing open the double doors wide enough for Aidan to wheel the bed through, following closely behind, as Rowan led them down the hallway and into the operating theatre. The nurses gathered around Rowan, assisting him as they prepared Giselle for surgery. Aidan's phone buzzed in his pocket, and when he checked it, he saw a message from Andrew. "Dr. Hawthorne would like to observe if Giselle is taken into surgery." It read. Dr. Rowan Aidan called as the doctor entered an adjoining washroom. Aidan followed, showing him Andrew's message. Rowan quickly changed into scrubs, paying no mind to Aidan's presence, then moved to the sink to scrub his hands. A nurse helped him with a cap and face mask as he prepared for surgery. Another nurse gave Aidan a mask to wear as well as a lab coat. He quickly wore them. "See that screen over there?" Rowan pointed to the hovering monitor above the operating table. "Connect your phone to it via Bluetooth and video call Dr. Hawthorne. She can observe and interact with us," he instructed. Aidan quickly complied, and soon Dr. Hawthorne appeared on the overhead screen. One of the nurses inputted instructions into the control panel, causing the screen to track Rowan's movements as he worked. Aidan realized the setup acted like a robotic assistant. "She timed out?" Dr. Hawthorne's voice echoed in the room, tinged with resignation. "Yes, and we've got less than 3 minutes to deliver the baby before oxygen runs out," Rowan said, grabbing his scalpel. "Understood. I'm sorry I couldn't be there," Dr. Hawthorne replied. "You're only human," Rowan said. "We're glad you can still join us, even if it's virtually. Anita and Dr. Sterling are on their way with a Hawthorne brand incubator," Dr. Hawthorne added. Rowan paused to glance at the screen. Dr. Hawthorne shrugged. "Don't look at me. Turns out this Hawthorne guy just wants to monopolize the medical supply market by any means," she quipped. Rowan chuckled. "How is this incubator different from our regular one? Wait, let me guess. It's like a biomedical incubator designed to function like a real womb?" he joked. Dr. Hawthorne raised an eyebrow. "How come you've heard about it? It is supposed to be in the testing stage," she probed in jest. Rowan paused mid-action and gaped at her. "Wait, you're serious?" She grinned. "Very serious. According to this handwritten manual, the Hawthorne BioSync womb incubator simulates a real womb environment, amniotic fluid, gentle movements, even nutrient delivery through a synthetic umbilical cord. It doesn't just keep the baby warm, it actively supports development. Oxygen and nutrients are provided in the exact way a placenta would. They've built in real-time biomonitoring so it can detect issues before they even arise and adjust conditions automatically." Rowan took a quick glance at Dr. Hawthorne via the screen, arching an eyebrow in disbelief. "You're telling me this incubator delivers nutrients, oxygen, and even simulates the mother's heartbeat?" "Exactly," Dr. Hawthorne replied with a chuckle. "It's practically a second womb. They even got the immune-boosting properties covered, like the baby's still in utero. It's designed to keep preemies and high-risk infants as close to their natural environment as possible until they're ready to face the outside world." Aidan watched as Dr. Rowan's brows furrowed in thought. He knew the Hawthorne conglomerate dabbled in countless innovations to meet market demands, and though the incubator Dr. Hawthorne mentioned was still in the testing phase, Aidan believed it might be the baby's best chance for survival. While he wasn't an expert, it was clear the baby needed every possible advantage at this critical moment. Aidan figured Dr. Hawthorne must have been confident in the incubator's potential, which explained her ability to joke with Dr. Rowan despite the gravity of the situation. Yet he couldn't help but notice the efficiency with which Rowan worked while speaking, and whenever he paused, the nurse seamlessly took over. It was an almost surreal synergy, like the nurses were extensions of Dr. Rowan himself. Just then, the doors burst open, and a breathless Dr. Yen hurried in, already dressed in scrubs. "What did I miss?" Dr. Yen asked, in a breathless tone, and without missing a beat added, "Howdy, Dr. Hawthorne. Congratulations on your triplets. I heard they're absolutely adorable. I was supposed to be at your house visiting this morning, but, duty calls." She added a dramatic flair, causing both Rowan and Dr. Hawthorne to chuckle. Yen joined in, and the light banter continued. Dr. Rowan mentioned the Hawthorne BioSync womb incubator, prompting Yen to say, "I don't know about you, but that's a man looking out for the womenfolk. Imagine if he could create an incubator that could carry a baby from conception to term." Her eyes dimmed in mirth. "That's a hard no from me. That would do more harm than good," Dr. Hawthorne replied. Rowan chuckled, his eyes crinkling with a smile. "Yeah, big surprise there," he muttered playfully. Aidan furrowed his brows in suspicion at Rowan's tone and smile. Nearly 3 minutes later, Anita and Dr. Sterling arrived, wheeling in the Hawthorne BioSync womb incubator. The device, sleek and advanced, resembled the curvature of a womb. Its transparent outer shell mimicked the uterine environment, complete with bioengineered amniotic fluid and temperature regulation technology. Soft pulses of light within the incubator simulated the mother's heartbeat, designed to create a comforting womb-like atmosphere for the baby. "Delivery for Dr. Rowan," Anita announced, slightly out of breath. Dr. Sterling waved, bending over to catch her breath. Despite the pressure of the situation, the doctors exchanged quick pleasantries with the breathless Anita and Dr. Sterling, but didn't break their concentration. Anita gestured to Aidan, who quickly moved to assist them in preparing the incubator. The BioSync womb incubator was equipped with a complex set of sensors and AI-driven features designed to constantly monitor the baby's vitals. As they carefully moved the equipment closer to the bed, Aidan noticed the slight hum of the machine, indicating its systems were fully active. "All set," Dr. Sterling said, as she finished connecting the incubator. Rowan nodded in acknowledgement as he continued to make the incision, carefully cutting through Giselle's abdomen. Aidan stood back, holding his breath, as Dr. Rowan, Yen and Sterling, along with the nurses, worked deftly. Within minutes, the baby was carefully lifted out, small, fragile, and barely clinging to life. The infant's skin was pale, and there was no immediate cry. Dr. Rowan's face tightened in concentration, cradling the newborn in his hands as he moved quickly but carefully toward the incubator. The AI-driven sensors in the BioSync detected the infant's presence and activated their monitoring systems, displaying the baby's weak vitals on the overhead screen. As Rowan carefully placed the baby inside, the machine immediately began regulating the environment, replicating the warmth, moisture, and rhythms of the womb. The bioengineered amniotic fluid gently enveloped the infant, while the soft, rhythmic pulses of light mimicked the mother's heartbeat. It was as if the baby had never left the womb. The tension in the air was palpable. Aidan didn't even know he was holding his breath. "Vitals are stabilizing," Anita reported with hesitant excitement as she monitored the readings closely. Everyone let out a small sigh of relief, while Rowan focused on ensuring the baby's transfer went smoothly. Dr. Yen worked quietly in the background. She had already begun the process of closing up Giselle's womb, accepting that the giant womb-like incubator was actually working. Aidan couldn't help but glance at Giselle. Pity washed over him as he looked at her. So still, lifeless, with only the machines keeping her body functioning long enough to save her child. She would never get to hold her baby or be a part of his life. Aidan thought it was tragically unfair, but he was thankful that her body had at least helped bring the baby this far. The silence was suddenly broken by a series of loud, alarming beeps. All eyes darted to the overhead monitors, where Giselle's vitals were displayed. "She's crashing," Yen said flatly, her voice laced with resignation. The heart rate dropped, the blood pressure plummeted, and within seconds the monitors flatlined. Every vital sign disappeared, leaving only the ominous, continuous tone of death. "Time of death," Yen murmured, marking the moment. The room fell into a solemn silence, the hum of the BioSync incubator now the only sound cutting through the stillness. Aria, observing the surgery room from her bed, let out a sigh. They all knew Giselle was going to die, but she was certain that, like her, everyone was still hoping for a miracle. At least she was, Aria thought. Still, she was grateful it wasn't a double tragedy. Her son was alive, and with the Hawthorne BioSync womb incubator, Aria dared to believe he would do just fine. She hadn't quite believed her ears when Nathaniel explained his ideas about the artificial womb and how far they had come. You know, like I mentioned before, I don't like speaking about these things until I'm sure they're viable. The BioSync Womb Incubator is an experiment we've been working on, and although we've tested it successfully, I think it should be a last resort. It would seem like the baby is a test subject, and I don't think it's fair to gamble with Jake's baby like that, Nathaniel was saying. Arya gaped at him, snatching the notes on the contraption from his hands. Do you realize the baby's chances of surviving are very low? Something like this could be the intervention we need. How do you even come up with these ideas? Nathan, I could kiss you right now, she said, quickly scanning the pages of his notepad, scribbled neatly in his cursive handwriting. Nathaniel placed a hand under her chin, gently lifting her face to meet his gaze. I don't mind a kiss, he rasped. Arya giggled, feeling somewhat relieved by the new development, knowing it would be such a relief if it worked. I owe you lots of kisses. A little bird told me the reason I had a restful night was because Daddy here has been an angel, she teased. Nathaniel grinned and tapped his lips. Arya giggled some more before pressing a kiss to his lips. Andrew chuckled. Now, how do we get this ingenious contraption of yours to Evergreen Memorial? Arya asked. Can we prepare Dr. Sterling and Anita to handle it? Andrew inquired. Sure. Get them and have Lewis ready to take them to the office to pick it up, Nathaniel had said. Now, Arya watched as Dr. Yen pulled a white sheet over Giselle's body. She turned her eyes to Nathaniel, who had come to settle beside her on the bed after taking a bath. You did your best, my love, Nathaniel whispered close to her ear, drawing her against his chest. At the hospital, Aidan caught a movement by the operating room door. Looking in that direction, he saw Jaden standing there, peeking inside through the glass part of the door. He moved to join her outside, hating that he had to deliver the news. Hey, Aidan greeted softly. Jaden nodded in acknowledgement. Did she started to say, her voice trailing off as she asked quietly, wanting to know if Giselle had even woken up. Aidan shook his head. The woman nodded in understanding. And her child? She probed, her eyes meeting his. He's alive for now, he replied solemnly. Meanwhile, at the Hawthorne guard's apartment, Andrew shifted the jeep into gear before answering Jake's question. The baby's still alive, Andrew said, causing Jake's chest to tighten with emotion. How are they keeping him alive? Jake asked, his heart sinking as Andrew's silence about Giselle confirmed what he already feared. She was really gone. It's a boy, Lewis added from the back seat. Jake turned to look at him through the gap between the front seats. I drove Anita and Dr. Sterling to Evergreen Memorial with the boss's artificial womb, Lewis explained. Jake was still struggling to process the fact that Lewis had just told him the gender of his child when the revelation about the artificial womb hit him. What? He whispered, disbelief clear in his voice. The boss has been working on this invention for a while, Andrew elaborated. We only found out when I told him about Aidan's call saying Giselle was being taken into surgery. He invented an artificial womb, Jake repeated, stunned. Yeah, Lewis confirmed. Dr. Hawthorne was just as shocked. He kept it pretty under wraps, Andrew added. Well, you know how he is, Charles chimed in. He's like our own Tony Stark, he joked. Jake leaned back in his seat, his mind racing with all the new information. This artificial womb, it's actually working? Jake asked in amazement. Yeah, it's been functioning for 3 hours now, Lewis replied. Well, I'll be damned, Jake muttered, feeling a cautious flicker of hope. Does this mean his son might actually be okay, he wondered, scared to fully believe it. As Andrew drove out of the estate toward Evergreen Memorial, Jake found himself questioning whether they'd keep the baby at the hospital or bring him back home. What's Dr. Hawthorne's plan? Jake asked, certain she had to be involved in all this. How do you know she has a plan? Andrew teased, shooting him a side glance. Jake shrugged. I just can't see her not being involved, he said. Andrew chuckled. She would have gone to the hospital herself instead of appearing virtually if the boss had allowed it, he said. Jake's heart tightened with emotion at the thought that Dr. Hawthorne had been present, even if only virtually, in the operating room. We're to take care of Giselle's body, and she wants us to bring the baby to the concierge medical unit, but... Andrew trailed off, glancing at Jake. Jake met his gaze with a knowing nod. Sean Cavalier is there, Jake finished the sentence. Dr. Hawthorne didn't think Sean would find out, but the boss wants the decision from here on to be yours, Andrew explained. Jake nodded in acknowledgement. If Dr. Hawthorne says she wants my son at the concierge medical unit, then he's going to be brought back here. She doesn't say things lightly, and I'm not putting him in jeopardy because of Sean Cavalier. We've got a baby in an incubator, and that's that. He's a guest and he should mind his damn business, Jake said firmly. Well, you should know that's everybody's sentiment, Charles rasped in agreement. Upon arriving at the hospital, the four men made their way to the topmost floor, just as the Hawthorne guards were wheeling Giselle's covered body out of the operating room. Jake halted in his tracks at the sight, with Charles and Lewis standing beside him in silent support. He approached the body and placed a hand over the shrouded face, pausing before stepping back. Andrew spoke up. "Take the body to the van downstairs. We'll join you shortly." The guards nodded and left, taking Giselle's body away. Jake stood watching them disappear down the hallway. "Jake!" Andrew called, drawing his attention away from the retreating figures. Charles noticed Jake's fists clenched tightly at his sides. "Come meet your son. That's your future. What just left? That's your past. Let it go," Andrew said firmly, nodding towards the departing men. Jake gave a stiff nod. Lewis gave him a friendly pat on the back before they all followed Andrew to the nursery. Jake froze in the doorway when he saw Anita, Aiden, Dr. Sterling, Dr. Yen, and Dr. Rowan talking near a curved artificial womb in the corner of the room. There were several regular incubators, but the only one in use on this floor was the BioSync womb incubator. Anita turned and, seeing them, smiled warmly at Jake before hurrying over to give him a hug. "Thank you," Jake murmured as she pulled back. Aiden joined them, jerking him into a hug as well. "He's doing well. Better than we could have hoped for," Anita said, tears welling up in her eyes. Jake nodded gratefully. Jake met Aiden's gaze, silently searching for an answer, wondering if Giselle had woken up at any point during the ordeal. As if reading his thoughts, Aiden shook his head in silent confirmation. Jake exhaled deeply, releasing a long, weary sigh. Charles caught Dr. Sterling's gaze, and she offered him a faint, weary smile. Her red-rimmed eyes showed how hard this ordeal had been on everyone. He silently prayed the baby would pull through, making all this heartache worth it. Jake moved closer to the BioSync womb incubator. Inside, the baby lay curled up in a fetal position, eyes closed, nestled safely within the contraption, making small, regular movements. "It's mind-blowing, isn't it?" Dr. Rowan commented, standing beside him. Jake spared him a quick glance before returning his focus to the incubator, utterly mesmerized by the sight of his son. "He's so small," Jake whispered, barely audible. He couldn't help but compare the infant to the Hawthorne triplets, and the difference was striking. His heart ached. All he wanted was to hold his son, to shield him from the world, and promise he'd always be there for him. "Oh, yes, he's tiny for his age," Dr. Rowan agreed. "But given the circumstances, it's not a concern. He'll catch up to the proper size soon enough. I'm usually not one to gamble on medical risks, but we've been monitoring every minute, and the results are astounding." Jake nodded, taking it all in. "Dr. Hawthorne wants him moved to the house. Is that possible?" he asked, a hint of worry in his voice. "Absolutely," Dr. Rowan replied confidently. "We've been testing the limits of this device, and it's fully transportable with the baby inside." He grinned, obviously pleased. A few minutes later, they made their way downstairs, carefully transporting the now shielded incubator. Jake spotted Jaden standing off to the side, not far from the van that carried Giselle's body. When she saw him, she gave him a nod, her tear-streaked face a reflection of her grief. Jake could see she had been crying as expected. Giselle had literally died saving her, and the two had become friends. He gestured for her to join them, and she hurried forward. Meanwhile, Andrew, Dr. Rowan, and Dr. Sterling supervised the careful loading of the incubator into a Farmer Hawthorne van, with the doctors and Anita entering the back alongside it. "We'll meet you back at the house," Andrew said as he, Charles, and one of the bioengineers from Farmer Hawthorne closed the doors. After the van departed, Andrew, Jake, Charles, Jaden, Aiden, and Lewis followed behind the vehicle carrying Giselle's body. At some point during the drive, Andrew took the lead, guiding the convoy toward John Davies's mansion, where Tom Hill was waiting for them. In the expansive garden behind the estate, a freshly dug grave lay beside another, where Julia's father had been buried. A van carrying a pristine white casket was parked nearby, alongside a reverend who stood ready for the ceremony. Giselle's body was gently moved into the casket, which was then sealed and lowered into the grave. The reverend delivered a short sermon and prayer, after which the grave was swiftly covered with dirt. Jake, Jaden, and the rest of the men took turns sprinkling earth on Giselle's grave before stepping back, watching as the laborers Tom had brought began cementing the grave and laying marble while building a tombstone to mark the site. Jake stood back, quietly observing, feeling a sense of disbelief that it was over. Julia, his jewels, was buried now. Tom approached him, handing him an envelope. Jake accepted it cautiously, glancing at the older man. "Documents to the properties. They're all yours now," Tom said before walking away. Jake didn't bother looking inside the envelope. Instead, his gaze remained fixed on the grave, watching as the workers continued their task. Andrew, Aidan, Charles, Jaden, and Lewis came to stand beside him in silence. Meanwhile, the Farmer Hawthorne van carrying the biosync womb incubator, along with the doctors, arrived at the Hawthorne estate and headed to the concierge medical unit. As the Hawthorne guards and a bioengineer carefully unloaded the incubator from the van, Sean Cavalier, who had been out for a walk, stood at a distance, observing. He watched silently as the shielded incubator was carried into the medical unit. A few moments later, Sean slipped inside, unnoticed, watching as the incubator was positioned in the corner. When the shield was removed, he could see the tiny, fragile baby inside, and the sight clearly affected him. "I suppose Dr. Hawthorne is literally bringing work home," he remarked, drawing the attention of the doctors. Anita shot him a wary glance. "I see you're feeling much better," Dr. Rowan said, approaching Sean. Sean shrugged. "I'm bored to death. I need to get back to work," he responded. "Understandable," Rowan replied. "Why don't I check your vitals and see if it's safe to discharge you yet?" Sean nodded, turning to leave with Dr. Rowan. He cast one last look at the incubator as Anita quickly pulled a privacy shield around it. "Shouldn't the baby's mother be here with it? Seems odd to leave a preemie all alone," Sean commented. Dr. Rowan's expression softened. "The mother passed away, but I assure you, the child won't be alone." Returning to the Hawthorne estate, the inside of the Jeep was as quiet as a tomb, each man processing the events of the day. Andrew reflected on the fact that although Giselle's ending was tragic, she had undeniably brought chaos into their lives. So many people have died because of her. He remembered when she had been determined to end Dr. Hawthorne's life. And now, ironically, she was the one who, in a strange way, was sustaining her legacy. As they passed the entrance to Jake's new house, Aidan remarked, "Is nobody going to comment on the fact that Jake is now a next-door neighbor to the Hawthornes?" "I wouldn't call it a next-door neighbor, per se. It's more like acres of land and Jake's modest mansion on the side," Charles corrected in mirth. "Semantics," Lewis chimed in. "What? How did he pull that off?" Jaden asked from the third-seat row, despite her somber mood. "I take it you haven't been checking your accrued shares from the Hawthorne conglomerate," Lewis replied, glancing back at her over his shoulder. "Whoa, are you telling me we're that rich now?" Jaden said, sitting up and pulling out her phone, clearly to check her financial worth. After a short pause, she muttered, "Damn." Her voice carried a note of incredulity. "How did you even manage to get the house? It seems foolish for anyone to sell such a promising property, especially in this neighborhood," Charles added. "It wasn't me. That was Owen's doing," Jake said with feigned annoyance. "And I can tell you, it cost a fortune. But I'm not worried. I told him if by any chance Christine leaves me and my kids get too old to stick around and I decide to go back to my old ways, he's buying the damn property. I have it in writing and made him and Liam thumbprint the agreement just to be sure," Jake quipped. The interior of the car filled with laughter. "Jake, that's invalid. They're 5 years old," Andrew chuckled. "I don't care. If he's old enough to get the house, he should be able to understand the consequences of wasting money. I don't need that kind of big house. I'm fine with my apartment," Jake replied. I'm sure Christine will disagree, Lewis said. Speaking of Christine, did you tell her about the baby, Jake? Aidan asked from the second row. Not only did I not tell her, but I was supposed to have someone help her move to the new house. And I forgot, Jake said with resignation. And we're only in the first week of marriage, he added almost to himself. If she's a good woman and loves you for real, she'll understand, Jaden said from the back. From your mouth to God's ear, Jaden. I really don't want to screw this up. It wouldn't be good to have 2 kids with neither of their mothers sticking around, Jake joked, trying to lighten the mood. Aidan reached forward to pat him reassuringly on the back. We got you, man, he said. Damn straight, Andrew added. Back at the Hawthorne household, Nathaniel, along with Miss Everly and Miss Bella, carried the babies to the room he now shared with Arya, while Alex and Ethan helped set up the babies' mini-cots beside the king-sized bed where Arya sat. Anna and Noria were seated in the sitting area on one side of the expansive room, with Anna talking about her midnight adventure with Liam and Owen. Miss Everly gently placed Mason in Arya's arms so she could feed him first, while Nathaniel held baby Esme, and Miss Bella carried Landon. I thought I heard the babies fussing, so I got up to check on them just to be sure, only to find Owen and Liam lying on a makeshift bed right beside the babies' cots, with all the adjoining doors open. The first question that struck me was, how on earth did they manage to pull that off? Anna said, laughing. The cots have wheels, Noria supplied with a smile. Yes, thank you, Noria. Once I noticed the wheels, I felt a bit relieved. It was such a cute picture. I just love how those 2 are so determined to watch over their baby brothers and sister, Anna added. Anna came to get me to help carry the boys back to their beds, and they didn't wake up, Alex chimed in, chuckling. My poor babies, they must be exhausted, Arya said. They'll be resuming school on Monday, so I have to make sure they haven't ruined their sleeping pattern, Nathaniel rasped. Oh, I'm going to miss them. You could at least wait until we leave before sending them off to school, Anna replied, with a hint of sadness. You're leaving in 2 weeks. You still have 2 weekends to spend with them. Don't be greedy, Ethan teased. Anna stuck her tongue out at him. Very mature, Anna, Ethan retorted. Then turning to Alex, he added, You're marrying a child. Anna giggled and threw a pillow at him. While the others continued their light banter, the weather forecast weighed heavily on Nathaniel's mind, causing his thoughts to spiral with looming possibilities. He couldn't shake the thought of the biosync womb incubator sitting out in the north wing under a tent, especially with the weather forecast predicting worsening conditions. As of today, the forecast warned of plummeting temperatures, icy winds, and a heavy snowstorm expected to hit by nightfall. It wasn't that he lacked confidence in the invention. He was just concerned that the biosync womb incubator hadn't been tested in such extreme conditions. Babies in the womb are well protected from external environmental changes like cold temperatures. The mother's body acts as a buffer, maintaining a stable temperature for the baby regardless of the weather outside. The uterus, amniotic fluid, and the mother's internal body heat work together to create a warm, controlled environment for the fetus. However, if a mother is exposed to extreme cold for long periods, or her body temperature drops significantly, it could indirectly affect the baby by reducing blood flow and oxygen to the fetus. And although the biosync womb incubator was designed to act as a womb, there's no telling its reaction to such extreme weather, and this wasn't the time to take any risks, not when the baby's very life depended on it. And what if the snowstorm is severe enough to cut off the electricity supply in the region? The concierge medical unit is merely a tent, not a sturdy building, and the biosync womb incubator has only about 10 minutes of backup power. If it shuts down, the baby could die. Nathaniel's brows furrowed as a new thought struck him. The concierge medical unit had been incredibly useful over the past few weeks. What if he built a fully functional mini-hospital within the estate? That way, they'd have on-site emergency medical care, and Arya could sometimes work from home, staying close to the family. He began mentally planning the layout, even considering adding a separate entrance to the estate. This would ensure that if Arya ever brought in a random patient, it wouldn't pose any security risk to the family. As his thoughts expanded, the idea of building guest houses for his friends during future visits crossed his mind. His children could also have their own space when they grow older. Well, except for baby Esme, of course. Nathaniel glanced down at her, catching her gaze as she looked up at him with wide-eyed curiosity. She smiled as soon as he met her gaze, and his heart swelled with emotion. "You, my little princess, are going to stay right here with me and your mama," he whispered, pressing a gentle kiss on the tip of her nose. She briefly closed her eyes, her face lighting up with a smile. "My God, you're adorable," Nathaniel murmured, filled with affection. A flash of light caught his attention, and he turned to see Alex snapping a picture of him and Esme. Nathaniel chuckled as Alex stood up and came over to show him the picture. "We're going to make an album out of this," Alex said. "Thanks, man," Nathaniel rasped. Meanwhile, Jake and the rest of the team, upon reaching the estate, head to the northern wing towards the concierge medical unit. Andrew glanced up through the windshield, noticing that the snow had started to fall more heavily, quickly covering the vast grounds with a layer of powdery dust. "Looks like the snow's picking up," Andrew muttered. Although Jake acknowledged Andrew's words by looking out at the swirling snow, he didn't respond. His mind was preoccupied with Christine and how she would react to the news of a baby suddenly becoming part of their lives. Even though the baby wouldn't actually be born for a few more months, Jake already considered him part of the family. Jake had told Christine about Giselle and the baby, but he was still uneasy about how she truly felt about the situation, especially now that they were married and expecting a baby of their own. Andrew, catching Jake's distant expression, felt a pang of sympathy. There was so much happening to Jake all at once, and Andrew wished he could relieve some of his burdens. When they reached the concierge medical unit, everyone stepped out and was immediately hit by the freezing cold air. As the others walked ahead, Andrew fell into step beside Jake and said, "You need to tell Christine everything, Jake. Get her on board. She's either in or out. It might hurt like hell at first, but it's far healthier for the family you're trying to build," he advised, giving Jake a friendly pat on the shoulder. "Thanks, man," Jake replied, knowing Andrew was right. It wouldn't do to keep something like this from her, especially when she'd eventually find out. He tried to dissect why he was so uncomfortable discussing the issue with her and realized it was because he was avoiding confrontation. But sooner or later, they'd have to face it together. Upon entering the unit, finding the section where the biosync womb incubator was stationed was easy. Someone had rearranged the privacy shields to conceal the entire left side of the unit, using screens to create a walkway from the main entrance. The Kimuras were shielded from view, unable to see anyone coming inside. Andrew immediately recognized the soft, flowery scent of his woman's perfume and knew Anita was still there. He led the others inside the shielded walkway until they reached the inner makeshift space where the biosync womb incubator was stationed. Anita was the only one there, sitting beside the machine, watching and recording the baby's vitals. Jake grew concerned when he realized she was alone. "They left you here by yourself?" Jake asked, his voice tinged with frustration. Anita turned to face them, her expression brightening with a smile when she saw Andrew before shifting back to Jake. "Nate gave me instructions on what to record and what to watch for. I'm the only one with express orders to stay here," she quipped. Jake nodded in understanding. "Thank you for doing this." "You don't need to thank me, Jake. Aside from this being my job, this baby is family," she replied. The sound of the other doctors talking with Sean and Samuel Cavalier from the far end of the unit made Anita tense, and Andrew quickly stepped closer. "Is something wrong, babe?" he asked, gently taking hold of her forearm. "Sean saw the baby earlier," Anita said quietly. "And?" Jake prompted, moving closer with Aiden, Charles, Lewis, and Jaden following. "He was asking Dr. Rowan about the baby's mother," Anita whispered, her eyes gleaming with concern. Jake didn't like the sound of that. His phone chimed with a message, and he pulled it out. It was Christine asking where he was. Even though Anita had told them that Dr. Rowan was able to steer Sean away and was planning to discharge him, Jake still couldn't shake off his apprehension. He realized now that the baby needed constant monitoring, and they were going to need someone watching the incubator most of the time. He figured he could step in and learn how to help care for the baby alongside Anita, or anyone else Dr. Hawthorne and Nathaniel assigned. "Do you think you could teach me how to monitor the baby's vitals?" Jake asked Anita. "That way I can understand what I'm looking at and be able to help." Anita nodded with a smile. "Of course," she replied. When Jake's phone chimed again, Andrew gave him a pointed look and said, "Go take care of that, Jake. I'll stay here." Jake nodded with resignation and left. Back at the Hawthorne estate, Arya watched as Nathaniel kept glancing between his custom-made digital watch and the snow-covered grounds outside. His brows were furrowed, and his eyes were dark with concentration. She could tell something was bothering him, but she couldn't quite figure out what. Her relief was palpable when Dr. Williams finally walked in. The other doctor hadn't been able to make it to the house earlier since he was the only one available at the concierge medical unit. His arrival now meant that Dr. Rowan and Dr. Sterling were back, and Dr. Williams could finally help her examine Nathaniel's heart. "Thanks for coming, Dr. Williams," Arya said, catching Nathaniel's attention. He turned to look in their direction. "Sorry for the delay. Shall we, Nate?" Dr. Williams asked. Nathaniel glanced from him to Arya. He wanted to protest that he was fine. Irritation welled up inside him, but he remembered they were surrounded by family and friends, and speaking up would only make everyone worry more. "Very well," he said, walking over to pass baby Esme to Anna. "Where are you going?" Ethan asked. "Routine check," Nathaniel replied. Ethan nodded, exchanging a glance with Alex. As Nathaniel joined Dr. Williams, Ethan and Alex followed him. Nathaniel knew his irritation was unfounded, but he was still somewhat exasperated with Ariana. He'd told her he was fine, but she fussed over him anyway. He suspected that perhaps his reaction wasn't really about her. His mind was still on the biosync womb incubator and his indecision about where to station the contraption. That indecision was gnawing at him, making him feel irritated. Still, Ariana was the simplest target for his frustration, and so he focused it on her. He had expected Dr. Williams to lead him toward the elevator, heading down to the foyer on their way to the concierge medical unit. The idea of being examined there in the open space, without any privacy, only worsened his irritation. He then did that thing again, rubbing his chest and then his shoulder as a result of feeling a dull ache beneath the surface. It was a gesture he had made unconsciously, but Ethan noticed. His brows furrowed with concern, knowing it was a clear sign of potential heart trouble. Dr. Williams, however, led them toward the twins' old room. Nathaniel's brow furrowed, his irritation flaring again. He assumed the older man was planning to check his blood pressure, which he found a complete waste of time. As they reached the door, he was ready to tell the doctor that they could have taken his blood pressure upstairs in his own restroom. It was spacious enough and more than adequate for any quick medical examination Dr. Williams wanted to conduct. But as Nathaniel stepped into the room, he stopped short. The space had been completely transformed. No longer a bedroom, it resembled a cutting-edge medical lab, equipped with everything needed for the most advanced procedures. The room featured sleek metallic walls, lined with state-of-the-art equipment. A sterilization unit hummed quietly in one corner, next to a medical console displaying real-time holographic scans of vitals. In the center was a pristine bed with robotic arms suspended overhead, capable of performing delicate surgery without human error. The air smelled of antiseptic, and the quiet hum of machinery gave the room a cold, detached feel. Monitors surrounded the bed, each showing detailed readings of heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, and even genetic markers. A separate console blinked with oncology-specific data, ready to monitor cancer treatments, track tumor growth, and map cellular responses. One wall housed a bank of cryogenic chambers, likely for preserving critical biological samples. Next to that, an advanced artificial organ incubator was on standby, perfect for growing new tissue or storing harvested organs, should a transplant become necessary. A holographic interface floated in midair, providing instant access to a patient's entire medical history, genetic blueprint, and surgical plans. Everything in the room was designed for life-saving procedures, whether it was a heart transplant or the most aggressive cancer treatment. "What the?" Nathaniel muttered in disbelief, feeling like someone had taken his lab and fused it with Arua's field of medicine. "Wow," Alex whispered under his breath. "Is this your lab, Nate?" Ethan asked, his tone tinged with quiet envy. "I have no idea. How did you guys pull this off without me noticing?" Nathaniel asked, still processing the surprise. It's amazing what people can accomplish around here when they've got the backing of one of the world's top surgeons, a Farmer Hawthorne shareholder, And Nathaniel Hawthorne's wife, Dr. Williams joked. Go ahead and put this on, he added with a smug grin, holding up a hospital gown for Nathaniel. No, Nathaniel replied firmly, prompting Dr. Williams to sigh. Well, at least I gave it a shot, the older man muttered as he returned to hang the gown on a clothes hanger in the corner of the room. This is incredible, Ethan remarked, clearly impressed. Are you sure you don't want any partners, Nate? I wouldn't mind working in a place like this for the rest of my life, Alex chimed in. Just imagine how little we'd get done with Ethan's antics if we worked together, Nathaniel joked, removing his shirt and leaving his trousers on, his muscles catching the glow of the lab's bright lights. Remember that time in Biochem lab during our project? Alex laughed. You guys realize we've got an audience here, and they may end up being witnesses against me someday, Ethan said, mock seriousness in his voice. Don't worry, Mr. Blackwood. Your secrets are safe with me, Dr. Williams quipped, as Nathaniel lay down on the bed, surprised by how comfortable it was. His body seemed to melt into the softness. Thanks, Dr. Williams. Now I remember why I like you, Ethan joked, making Alex chuckle. This is really comfortable, Nathaniel admitted, his irritation fading for a moment, forgetting he was supposed to be angry. Dr. Williams swiftly connected Nathaniel to the various machines, and one by one the devices around the room came to life, displaying his vitals. A robotic voice announced his blood pressure, red blood cell count, and detailed information about his metabolism, as Dr. Williams continued attaching more monitors to Nathaniel's chest. Nathaniel's eyes darted around the room, absorbing all the data on the screens until an image of his heart appeared on a large digital display. He drew in a deep breath, slowly exhaling as he watched it beat in real time. But something was wrong. The heart on the screen didn't move with the steady, rhythmic precision he expected. Instead, it appeared sluggish, almost struggling with each contraction. The walls of his heart expanded more than they should have, and the left ventricle looked noticeably larger, bloated as if it was straining to keep up. His chest tightened as he saw the ventricles pumping with a faint irregularity, the beats weak, like a dying engine barely sputtering to life. Dr. Williams frowned, leaning in to examine the screen more closely. Nate, I don't like what I'm seeing, Ethan murmured, his entire frame tensing. Nathaniel's gaze remained fixed on the digital display, his pulse quickening as he watched the uneven movement of his heart. The robotic voice continued to rattle off his vital statistics in the background, but all he could focus on was that image. The once steady rhythm of his heart seemed on the verge of breaking down. The ejection fraction, the amount of blood the heart was pushing out with each beat, flashed on the screen, far lower than it should have been. Please say this is normal, Dr. Williams, Alex rasped, his voice catching as he watched the struggling organ, the reality sinking in. Dr. Williams shook his head grimly. No, I'm afraid not, Mr. Sterndale. Nate's heart isn't functioning as it should. There's significant strain on the left ventricle. It's enlarged, and it's not pumping efficiently. Dr. Hawthorne was right to alert me. She suspected Nate was starting to show signs of early heart failure. And here it is, he said with a sigh. The words hit Nathaniel like a physical blow, the air in the room suddenly feeling thinner, colder. He swallowed hard, his chest feeling even tighter as the weight of Dr. Williams's diagnosis sank in. I'm seeing signs of pooling blood, Dr. Williams continued, pointing to the screen where the sluggish flow became more apparent. Your heart, Nate, isn't pushing blood through fast enough, and your ventricles are struggling to keep up. Nathaniel's breath faltered, and he forced himself to stay calm, gripping the edges of the bed as his pulse pounded in his ears. The screen flickered with an irregular heartbeat pattern, each skip and flutter sending an icy stab of fear through him. Aria knew, Nathaniel whispered, nodding to himself. That's why she made you set this up, he added. Yes, Dr. Williams responded simply. The sound of Ethan typing into his phone broke through the noise in the room. Nathaniel turned in his direction, his heavy breathing mixing with the steady beeping of the machines and the robotic voice still chattering on. What are you doing? Alex asked, a hint of irritation in his voice. I'm sending an email to my CEO, Ethan replied, his fingers moving swiftly over the screen. I'll be working from here until we get this sorted. He pressed send and slipped his phone into his pocket. If he wants to replace me, he's welcome to try, Ethan added, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. So, what? What do we do, Doctor? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel caught Ethan's gaze and held it, his own eyes beginning to blur with tears. You idiot, the guy pays you a fortune, he muttered. Screw that, Ethan shot back, his voice trembling. Nathaniel's heart tightened with a mix of emotions. You're so stupid, Nathaniel said, his voice deeper, rougher than usual. Ethan threw him a small grin. Nathaniel groaned when he heard Alex typing on his phone too. You're supposed to be the level-headed one among us, Nathaniel quipped, shaking his head. Not today, Alex replied, tucking his phone away. Ethan's right. We're not leaving until you're fine. So, Doc, Alex added, shifting his gaze to Dr. Williams, I believe Blackwood asked you a question. What do we do now? Dr. Williams nodded, discreetly wiping away a tear before answering. We'll need to run more tests to confirm, but the next steps may involve aggressive treatment. Medication. Possibly surgery. If we can't stabilize the heart, a transplant might be necessary. Nathaniel knew Dr. Williams was trying to downplay the situation, likely to avoid alarming him or his friends. What the doctor didn't realize was that Arya had already told him that they had been preparing for this moment for months. That's why a Farmer Hawthorne BioSync organ incubator was on standby, ready for organ regeneration, preservation, and sustainability. He closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. It wasn't like he hadn't seen this coming, but damn it, he'd just welcomed 3 more additions to his family. He needed to be here to watch them grow up. The thought of leaving Arya a widow with men like Rowan circling her like vultures gnawed at him. What are my wife's instructions, Dr. Williams? Nathaniel asked, turning his head toward the older man, cutting through the half-truths the doctor was feeding his friends. Well, Dr. Williams stammered, caught off guard by the direct question. We're doing the surgery. Arya's voice cut through from the doorway, making everyone turn toward her. Dr. Hawthorne. Dr. Williams began with relief, but Arya gave him a shaky smile. Her eyes glistened with tears as she stepped inside, quietly shutting the door behind her and walking slowly to Nathaniel's bedside. Nathaniel's heart clenched at the raw emotion in her gaze. The most striking of all was fear. We fought the cancer, she started, her voice low and trembling as she tried to offer him a reassuring smile. Nathaniel sat up and reached out to cradle her face in his hands. She leaned into his touch, rubbing her cheek against his palm while holding his gaze with an intensity that was both loving and intense. We fought the cancer, and judging by that damn robot, we're still winning. We'll fight this too, and you will win. You'll stay and help me raise our children. If you think I'm going to let you give me clones of yourself and then leave me to parent them alone, especially with Liam's personality, you've got another thing coming, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Arya said, her words pulling a chuckle from him despite the heaviness of the moment. I'm sorry about the baby clones. Maybe when we try again, we can use a different approach, he quipped, earning a laugh from Arya, her eyes shining with love for him. Are you serious? You want us to try again? She asked, a touch of incredulity in her voice. Nathaniel gave her a sheepish smile. It's only fair. I feel kind of guilty about it, he confessed with a cringe. Arya chuckled, raising her hand to gently caress his face. I'm not going anywhere, my love. I promise you, Nathaniel rasped, his voice thick with emotion. Neither are we, Ethan added. Damn right, Alex echoed. So when's the surgery, Doc? Nathaniel asked, his eyes never leaving Arya's. Nathaniel's question hung over Arya like a ticking bomb. She wanted them to delay until she was stronger, able to move more freely so she could care for him after surgery. But as she studied the images on the screen, fear gripped her at the thought of taking that risk. In 48 hours, she finally said, casting a glance at Dr. Williams, who nodded in approval. In the meantime, we need to get you ready. You can't eat for 12 hours before the surgery. You're already on a special diet, which is good, and we've been extra cautious about bacteria anyway. We just need to be even more careful now. And no alcohol, not even a drop. Okay, my love, Arya said, meeting his gaze. All right, Nathaniel agreed. You don't let me drink anyway, he rasped, giving her a keen scrutiny. That's what kept you going this long, Nathaniel. Your strict diet, Dr. Williams pointed out. Arya smiled warmly at him, then returned her attention to Nathaniel. So I don't. What are you going to do about it, tough guy, she teased, making Alex chuckle. Wiped. Completely wiped. Ethan murmured, poking fun at Nathaniel under his breath. You're lucky you just had the babies. That's your only excuse, Dr. Mrs. Hawthorne, Nathaniel retorted, looking over her shoulder at Ethan. And you are asking to die right now, he added with a mock threat. Everyone laughed. Aria's gaze softened as she looked at him, her affection clear. When he caught her eye, his expression shifted, his eyes darkening with a slow, mischievous smirk. Aria lifted her hand to cup the side of his jaw, gently brushing her thumb against his skin. Are you sure you'll be able to assist with the surgery? Nathaniel asked, concerned about her stamina so soon after giving birth to their triplets. Dr. Williams chuckled, as though the question was absurd. You can't be serious, Aria responded. Leaning in closer, she whispered, I could be bleeding out, barely holding myself together, and I'd still make you my priority. Nathaniel knew she intended it as a joke, but he also knew she meant every word. The realization tugged at his heartstrings. As she pulled back to smile at him, he cupped the back of her neck, resting his forehead against hers. I love you, baby, he whispered, his voice deep and raw with emotion. Aria's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, and Nathaniel kissed her, unfazed by the fact that they weren't alone. Meanwhile, Jake made his way to his apartment, trying to figure out how he would break the news to Christine, feeling utterly overwhelmed and out of control. Ah, damn it. I'll take singlehood any day. This whole marriage partnership thing is harder than it looks, he grumbled to himself. When he reached his door, he took a deep breath and pushed it open, finding Christine pacing in the living room. That's not good, he thought. Christine stopped when she saw him, crossing her arms over her chest. Her face was set in a neutral, unreadable expression which Jake immediately knew spelled trouble. Great, I can't even make it past day 2, he thought, exasperated. I'm sorry, he started to say. Are you? She interrupted. Are you really, Jake? I know I asked you to marry me first, but I thought you wanted this, she added, gearing up for a rant. Jake suddenly recalled a time when he'd seen Nathaniel silence Dr. Hawthorne with a kiss. At the time, he thought Nathaniel was about to get either kicked in the groin or slapped across the face, but instead Dr. Hawthorne had been completely disoriented afterward. Nathaniel had calmly asked her to sit down and talk rationally, and that's exactly what had happened. Jake figured if it worked for Nathaniel, maybe he should try it, though he was certain Dr. Hawthorne would never have to deal with something like her husband running off to bury an ex-lover. Nathaniel was not that kind of man. With that thought, Jake moved toward Christine. His sudden approach startled her, causing her to stop mid-sentence, her eyes widening in apprehension as he strode toward her with a determined swagger. Reaching her, he cupped the back of her neck and pulled her in for a kiss. She resisted, trying to push him away, but he didn't let go. He couldn't recall Dr. Hawthorne reacting like that, though. When he pulled back to peer into her eyes, she was glaring at him. Yeah, he was pretty sure Dr. Hawthorne didn't react like that either. Sighing inwardly, he decided to give up on the whole alpha male routine and just apologize. I'm sorry, can we promise never to bring up the whole? Who asked you to marry them first again? I love you, Christine. It might not seem like it right now, but I do want this. And I need to tell you something. His tone softened, and he could tell he had gotten through to her because her glare melted into concern, her eyes searching his, now filled with worry. What's wrong? She asked hesitantly, as if afraid of the answer. Jake took hold of her hand and guided her to the couch. Sitting down, he gently pulled her onto his lap, positioning her sideways. Interlacing his fingers with hers, he began, Remember the lady I told you was carrying my child? He watched as Christine's eyes flickered with what seemed like pain before she blinked, her expression becoming emotionless. That single action sent a profound ache through Jake's heart. He knew it would be difficult for any woman to accept such a situation, but now he feared the child might never feel welcome in their home. What about her? Christine asked, her voice devoid of any emotion. She died, Jake said, holding her gaze, not wanting to miss even the slightest reaction. There was none. Oh, she responded in a dry tone. And the baby? Is the baby okay? She added, still emotionless. The baby? Jake hesitated, then continued. He's doing fine. Christine nodded, offering a shaky smile. That's good. So were you with him? Yes, I was with him and his mother. I had to make arrangements for her burial, he admitted, feeling like he shouldn't hold anything back anymore. Why did you have to do that? Didn't she have any family? Christine asked. Jake detected a hint of jealousy in her voice. He gently moved her off his lap and stood, putting some space between them. I was all she had, he replied, meaning every word. I see, Christine said, sounding a little dejected. Jake found it odd, considering Julia was dead. He figured he'd never truly understand women. I'm sorry we couldn't make it to the house today. First thing tomorrow morning we'll go there, and then you can invite your grandfather. Let's get this inheritance thing over with, Jake said. Christine must have noticed the trace of anger and frustration in his voice because she asked, sounding hurt, Why do you sound angry now? It's been a long day, that's all. Excuse me, I need to take a bath and join Andrew, he said, turning away. As he walked off, he couldn't shake the thought that maybe he was being paranoid or perhaps naive to think Christine would simply accept Giselle's baby and raise him as their own, alongside the children they'd have in the future. He supposed he was wrong. Of all people, he should know that life is rarely that straightforward. Being around the Hawthornes had clearly skewed his thinking, making him believe everyone could be that selfless. Maybe he had been expecting Christine to mirror Dr. Hawthorne in some way, and that was his mistake, not hers. He had no right to feel hurt or disappointed. Christine joined him in the bathroom, attempting to connect with him emotionally and mentally. Although Jake smiled and responded to her light banter and seduction, he felt himself becoming frozen inside, as if he were merely playing a role and his true self had been removed from the situation, leaving him as a detached observer. The last time he felt this way was when he had witnessed his father physically abusing his mother, knowing he was helpless and could do nothing but wait. Meanwhile, back at the Hawthorne household, Liam had overheard whispers about a baby being kept in a tube in the concierge medical unit. He couldn't quite understand whose baby it was, but he was sure it wasn't another child his mom had given birth to. He was certain his mom had stopped at 3 babies, so who could this baby in the tube be? All his attempts to gather more information had been futile. He was growing taller now and was easily noticeable, curse his father's perfect genes. He and Owen were significantly taller than their peers, being over the 95th percentile for height, which made it difficult for him to sneak around without being caught by one of his uncles. Still, he decided to take his investigation to the medical unit. But first, he wanted to be sure baby Landon, baby Mason, and baby Esme were fine. Shortly after, he walked through the rooms where baby Landon and baby Mason were sleeping, then continued through the adjoining doors to Esme's room, where he found Owen already checking on their baby sister. The two had made a pact to always watch over their younger sibling, regardless of whether the adults were doing so. It was ultimately their responsibility. She's sleeping now, Owen whispered as soon as he saw Liam. Liam nodded and gestured for Owen to follow him. Owen frowned but followed Liam through the adjoining doors to their room. He shut the door carefully behind them to avoid waking the babies. Owen, Mom had 3 babies, right? Liam asked in a low whisper. Owen frowned at the question, finding it rather silly. Yes, Owen replied, wondering what Liam was up to. I heard Uncle Lewis earlier talking on the phone about picking up a biosync womb incubator from Dad's office for a baby to be brought here to the medical unit, Liam explained quickly. Owen's frown deepened. Is the baby here now? He asked with interest. Uh-huh. I want to find out whose baby it is, Liam said, starting to put on his winter jacket. It's freezing outside, Liam, Owen warned with concern. I'm not going outside the estate. I just want to make sure Mum and Dad aren't hiding a 4th baby, Liam said. Why on earth would they do that, Liam? Owen asked incredulously. Liam shrugged. Maybe because the baby is sick and they don't want to get our hopes up, he said with concern. In that case, I'm coming with you, Owen said, rushing to the closet to grab his winter jacket. He then handed Liam gloves and made sure he picked appropriate footwear. A few minutes later, the two were at the back of the house. Going somewhere, they heard a voice say and turned to see their Uncle Anton leaning against a side wall outside the house. It's freezing out here. What are you doing standing there? Owen admonished. The older man chuckled. Nice try, kid. Where are you off to? He probed. We're going to the concierge medical unit to check on the baby, Owen replied. Liam facepalmed at Owen's bluntness. You couldn't think of a lie, he protested. Well, I don't intend to walk in a storm, and he's an adult. He can drive us there, Owen remarked, making Anton chuckle. All right, let's make a deal. I'll take you to the concierge medical unit if one of you can go get Aunt Dawn to come with us, Anton said. Owen and Liam exchanged a look. Then Liam shrugged and hurried back inside to do as Uncle Anton asked. May I ask why you want Aunt Dawn to come with us? Owen inquired, eyeing his Uncle Anton with suspicion. So she can help you back while I return to my post, he lied. Makes sense, Owen said. Not long after Dawn and Liam joined them. The young ones missed the long-suffering looks exchanged by the adults before Anton led them to a waiting car. Soon they arrived at the concierge medical unit. Anton helped the boys out of the car, and he and Dawn followed behind as the twins hurried inside. At the entrance, Anton pulled Dawn aside and pressed his lips against hers. I've missed you, he murmured into her mouth. Dawn clung to him with helpless abandonment. Inside the unit, Liam and Owen walked through the privacy shield, unsure if they were on the right path, until they heard Uncle Jake's and Uncle Andrew's voices. They quickened their steps. After Jake finished his bath and shared a private moment with Christine, he left with the intention of spending the night at the concierge medical unit, hoping to watch over his child and give Anita a break. When he reached the bottom floor of the apartment building, he ran into Aidan and Noria. As soon as Noria saw him, she hurried over to give him a hug, congratulating him on the baby. He's not actually born yet. We still have to give him time to complete his term, Jake said, smiling warmly at the young woman. He was glad to see her doing well, now that her lowlife of a father was finally out of her life for good. Yes, Aidan explained it to me. The Hawthornes are pretty cool, aren't they? She said with a bright smile. Jake chuckled at her enthusiasm. Yeah, they are pretty cool, he agreed. Where are you off to? Aidan asked. I want Anita to teach me how to take care of my little one. I think I'll spend the night there, Jake replied. Aidan nodded, meeting Jake's gaze and holding it. And Christine? He asked quietly. Jake shook his head and said nothing more. Aidan felt a surge of anger rise within him, but he kept it hidden, turning away to mask his emotions. Can I learn too? Noria asked suddenly, catching Jake off guard. Learn? He repeated, glancing from her to Aidan. To help watch the baby. I can babysit him while I study for my GED, Noria offered. Jake felt his heart tighten so painfully it was as if he was having a heart attack. You don't have to do that, Noria, but thank you for offering, Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. Aidan shifted his gaze to Noria, watching her with a new sense of respect for her innocent yet heartfelt gesture. I know I don't have to, Noria said, her tone steady. Dr. Hawthorne didn't have to do all the things she does to make us happy and comfortable, but she does it anyway. I've learned that around here, we go the extra mile for family. And as long as your baby is Aidan's to care for, then your baby is mine too, she finished with a warm smile. So it's not really an offer. I was asking Aidan to take me to the medical unit to join Anita. Jake couldn't trust himself to speak. He nodded, thinking about how Christine hadn't even asked whether the baby was at the estate or still in the hospital. She hadn't asked to see him either, let alone how Jake planned to take care of him. Maybe if we all take turns babysitting him, Dr. Hawthorne will allow him to be brought back here, Noria suggested. Jake pulled her into a hug and Aidan lowered his gaze in understanding. Thank you, Noria, Jake said softly. The three of them then headed to the concierge medical unit, where they found not only Lewis, Charles, Jordan, Andrew and Anita, but also Miss Morris, who had come to join them. She pulled Jake into a hug as well, congratulating him on the baby. He chuckled, not bothering to correct her. Dawn Hill is coming too. We'll all take turns babysitting him, okay? By the way, where's Christine? Miss Morris asked. She's, not feeling too good, Jake replied, though he noticed Miss Morris's brow furrowed in concern. After a moment, she nodded and stepped back. Jake watched as Anita, Miss Morris, Dr. Sterling and Noria gathered around the biosync womb incubator. Aidan and Andrew came to stand beside him. Sidebar, Andrew said, and Jake, Charles, Jordan, Aidan and Lewis followed him as they moved toward the exit, passing through the privacy shield. But before they reached the exit, Andrew stopped and asked, Why isn't Christine here with you, Jake? Jake ran a hand over his face before dragging his fingers through his hair. You know when they say love isn't everything, I think this is one of those times. I think I've made a mistake, Andrew, he said, his voice catching. Nearby, Tom Hill, who had come to give Sean Cavalier some papers to help him gain access to Anne Cavalier's inheritance, was on his way out. He paused outside the privacy screen as he overheard Jake's words, his brows furrowed, not at the statement, but at the pain in Jake's voice. I should have taken time to see if this arrangement would even work, Jake continued. She's jealous of a dead woman, man. I can just feel it. She's going to take it out on my son. Tom shut his eyes briefly, feeling somehow responsible. Maybe she just needs time, Lewis suggested, hesitant. Maybe, Jake said, though his tone carried little hope. I hope so, he muttered. Without letting the others see him, Tom quietly left and headed back to the house. Upon reaching the Hawthorne's house, Tom went looking for Nathaniel and found him in the living room. Dr. Hawthorne was in the bedroom, with Miss Everly and his Bella. Tom was relieved to find Nathaniel alone. He sat on the floor near the couch where Nathaniel lay, making sure he was close enough so they wouldn't be overheard. I see you've been evicted from your own room, Tom gestured. Nathaniel chuckled and let out a sigh, thinking about how he needed to tell Tom his heart condition was worsening. I need to tell you something, Tom began, making Nathaniel sit up and give him a sidelong glance. Did something happen with Gray? Nathaniel rasped, concern creeping into his voice. No, it's Jake, Tom clarified. What about him? Gosh, I really need to make up my mind about the BioSync womb incubator. I'm thinking it should be brought here to the house, maybe into one of the rooms we can turn into a nursery. That way Arya can keep an eye on the baby with Anita and Miss Everly, and I can make sure the contraption works as it should. Maybe we should hire 2 nannies or something, Nathaniel said, half thinking aloud. That's actually a good idea, but I don't think we need to hire nannies with all the women we have in the house. And there's Noria. We could give her the job. She's still young and could learn to be a nurse or something, Tom suggested. All right. Discuss it with Aiden and Jake. And let's bring the incubator here. I think that's the only way to keep my wife from heading there tomorrow anyway, Nathaniel agreed, chuckling. So, you wanted to tell me something about Jake? Nathaniel said, meeting and holding Tom's gaze. Tom relayed what he had overheard, and Nathaniel sighed, leaning back against the chair. How many hours has it been now since they married? Nathaniel remarked rhetorically, a note of worry creeping into his voice. Come on, Jake doesn't deserve this, Nathaniel muttered to himself. I understand she might be jealous, but the baby is innocent, though. I can call the judge and have the marriage annulled. I've got what I wanted. Gray is out of the company and Powell's practically kissing Jake's ass. I did this, I can undo it, Tom offered. Tom, you can't do that without his consent. Call him. Ask him what he wants to do and follow his lead, Nathaniel instructed. Tom nodded and got up to leave. When you're done with Jake, come back. I have something to tell you, Nathaniel said. What's stopping you from telling me now? Tom asked, his concern evident. Go, Tom, and come back, Nathaniel ordered, lying back down on the couch. Tom didn't bother returning to the concierge medical unit. Walking out of the expansive suite toward the elevator, he placed a call to Jake. Jake picked up on the second ring. Mr. Hill, is everything okay? Jake asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Remember the judge who presided over your wedding? Tom began. Yes, Jake replied hesitantly. I've known him for quite a while now. There was a time when he stood up to the president over a policy that made him extremely unpopular, and it put him and his family in danger. They were relentlessly hounded with people trying to erase their lives. Nathaniel's father and I supported him, helping to protect his family. I don't mean to bore you with all this background, but the point is there's nothing I would ask of him within the law that he wouldn't do. We could even have him quietly annul the marriage, giving you time to sort things out, Tom explained. Silence stretched between them for nearly 2 minutes. Don't we need her consent for that? Jake asked. And even if we manage to do it, if she finds out, can't she contest it? She can't contest something that never happened, Tom replied. I'm sure there would be people willing to say otherwise, Mr. Hill, Jake countered. What people, Darfield? As far as I recall, There was a bomb blast orchestrated by her grandfather's enemies that changed the course of the event, and the newspaper publicity was just a ploy to help her reclaim her inheritance. But remember, we're only speculating on what happens if she finds out, Tom said. Jake fell silent. Darfield, let me fix this, Tom urged. All it will take is a phone call, and you'll have the time you need, and it'll stay between us. Do it, Jake said after a pause. Then he added, "Thank you, Mr. Hill," before ending the call. Tom quickly made another call. Across the estate, Jake slowly lowered his phone, his eyes shut tightly. I'm just buying time, he repeated, as though trying to convince himself. Deep down, he hoped Christine would come around. Otherwise, he didn't think he could build a family with a woman who couldn't love his child. His heart ached at the sheer unfairness of it all. Are you sure about that, Jake? Andrew asked, having listened to the phone conversation alongside the other men. Before Jake could respond, Aidan spoke up. Nobody needs to know. He can marry her for real when he's ready. I think he's doing the right thing, Aidan said, still fuming at the thought of anyone rejecting an innocent baby for something that wasn't the child's fault. A part of him knew why it upset him so much. It hit too close to home, reminding him of his own abandonment, but he pushed the thought aside. Just then, Liam and Owen arrived at the medical unit, overhearing their Uncle Jake talking about his baby. Liam and Owen paused mid-stride, feeling something was off. They were pretty sure that wasn't how pregnancy worked. Weren't women supposed to carry babies for 9 months? Owen did a quick mental calculation, even counting on his fingers just to be sure, from the time their mum and dad told them they were expecting a new baby too now. So then he was certain Miss Powell couldn't have had the baby yet. So how come there was a baby in the tube for their Uncle Jake? Had Miss Powell refused to carry the baby, and they had to put it in the tube? Owen knew their dad was awesome at inventing stuff, so if that was the case, Liam had been right to warn their uncle about Miss Powell. Liam hurried ahead, slipping into the circle of adults, arms folded across his chest, glaring up at Uncle Jake. The men looked down, startled, confusion creasing their foreheads. Jake glanced at his wristwatch. Liam Hawthorne, my God, shouldn't you be in bed? Andrew said, exasperated. This is not the time, Uncle Andrew, Owen interjected, joining Liam. Owen, you too, Andrew added. Great, we've got the double trouble, Aidan quipped. Your baby? Really, Uncle Jake? Didn't I tell you to slow down with marrying that Jezebel? Liam said, glaring at his uncle. If the situation weren't so serious, Jake would have laughed. Yeah, the little rascal had warned him. Jake sighed and crouched to their height, glancing between Liam and Owen. So she couldn't even carry your baby, and you had to put him in a tube? Seriously? Owen chimed in, his tone laced with disbelief. Jake frowned, trying to grasp what the twins were talking about. So what? She's been pregnant for, what, a week? My mom carried 3 babies for 8 months. Trust me, I did the math, Owen continued. It dawned on Jake then. The twins thought the baby in the incubator was the one Christine was supposed to be pregnant with. Yeah, well, they weren't going to like the truth either. Andrew, Aidan, and Lewis chuckled in amusement. You're in big trouble, Uncle Jake, Anton remarked as he came up from behind, making the men turn to see him and Dawn approaching. Dawn quickly went to give Jake a hug. Unlike the others who'd been congratulating him, she said, I'm here to offer my help. I spoke with Anna earlier and we're all here for whatever you need. All of us, Jake nodded, feeling a swell of gratitude. But the weight of Christine's absence grew heavier with each passing moment. Dawn smiled fondly at the twins before heading inside to join the other ladies. Okay, I need to tell you something, and no judging eyes, all right? Jake began, eyeing the twins. Liam narrowed his gaze, while Andrew shook his head, trying not to laugh. Anton chuckled, watching the drama unfold. The baby isn't the one Christine is carrying. This baby is from a woman I dated before Christine, Jake explained. Liam gaped at him and Owen's eyes widened. I said no judging, Jake repeated quickly. The lady passed away before she could carry the baby to term, so your dad helped with an incubator to allow the baby to grow. Okay, and be nice. I've had enough emotional blows for today. Andrew noticed the twins' expressions softening. The glare was gone, replaced with concern and empathy. They exchanged a look, then closed the gap, wrapping their arms around their uncle. Jake felt a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't realized just how much he needed that hug. When Liam drew back and sighed, he said, "I bet Miss Powell threw you out. I've got to keep an eye on you. I can't trust you with females." Jake found himself laughing and tearing up at the same time. He pulled them both back into a tight hug, saying, "Please, never change." The other men laughed, watching the scene unfold. Jake picked them up and said, "Come on, let me show him to you." The twins nodded eagerly. "You can't give him a name yet, right?" Owen asked. "No, we have to wait," Jake rasped. Liam and Owen were fascinated by the sight of the baby floating in the incubator, surrounded by amniotic fluid. The adults grew quiet as Jake set them down, and they moved closer to the incubator, watching the tiny, fragile baby curled up inside. Looking back at Jake, Owen asked, "Can we move him to our room? So we can watch over him along with baby Landon, baby Mason, and little Esme?" Liam nodded in agreement, adding, "Don't worry, Uncle Jake. We'll take care of him." Andrew watched as Jake struggled to contain his emotions. Aidan discreetly turned away, wiping his tears. Just then, Aidan's phone rang. It was Tom asking if Noria would be willing to work as a nanny for the Darfield baby. He also mentioned that Nathaniel Hawthorne wanted the baby moved to the Hawthorne estate, closer to Dr. Hawthorne. "Yes, she'll take the job," Aidan responded without a second thought, not even bothering to ask Noria. He knew she would have done it for free. They all would. After ending the call, he turned to the others and said, "Boss wants." His voice faltered as his emotions swelled. Clearing his throat, he tried again. "Jake, the boss wants the incubator moved to his suite near Dr. Hawthorne. He also wants to hire Noria to assist Anita in taking care of the baby." Liam and Owen cheered, but Jake merely nodded and walked out, needing to be alone. He could feel the tears welling up, and he didn't want to break down in front of everyone. "These damn Hawthorns," he thought, as tears streamed freely down his face. On the other side of the estate, after Tom finished making his calls, he returned to join Nathaniel. "Done." "All settled," Tom said, sitting down on one of the chairs. Nathaniel slowly sat up and lifted his pajama top, revealing the contraption wrapped around his torso to monitor his heart rate. He pointed to the digital wristwatch he wore, which served as the reader. Tom's heart skipped a beat. "Oh, Nate," Tom began, fear evident in his voice and eyes. "Dr. Hawthorne? She's got one of these around her wrist to monitor me, and so does Dr. Williams," Nathaniel said, gesturing to the wristwatch. "They're operating on me tomorrow," Nathaniel stated simply. Tom felt as though his heart had just plummeted.